Forced to date. Sophia Turner is forced to fall in love at first sight with this dangerous man on their first meeting. With death being the only other option, she makes the first move. I am rich and I can fight. Be my boyfriend and I'll protect you. From then on, news of the Turner family's eldest daughter and #1 student keeping a gigolo slowly gets out. Alas, she is someone who protects people she calls her own fiercely, until that fateful day shielding the man behind her from the supposed hooligans, she proclaims coldly. My boyfriend is timid, so come at me if you have any issues instead. The hooligans shivers in fear as they look toward a certain big boss who is being protected. So the infamous, Devil Brown, actually has this kind of hobby. Chapter 1. It was August. The sun was scorching hot while the air was humid and stuffy. At the orphanage's entrance was a well-maintained middle-aged lady whose eyes were red from crying. She could hardly stand on her own as her husband, Gerald Turner, supported her delicate body. So this is our pitiful daughter. The man's eyes reddened too and he nodded. Yes. Gerald and his wife, Rose Morris, were playmates when they were young and had since become a loving couple. However, after getting married, they lost their daughter accidentally. He had lost hope after searching for her for 18 years, but a surprise came unexpectedly and they found her in the orphanage. He looked at the two people walking toward him, and his eyes fell on the girl who followed obediently behind the director of the orphanage. She wore a white cap and donned a clean set of blue sports attire. Her black hair was neatly pulled into a ponytail, and she had exquisite facial features on her pale and porcelain-like face. She looked at them silently with her beautiful upturned eyes. Her eyes looked lost and misty. In contrast to the other two who were agitated, she appeared a little too calm. Gerald was slightly taken aback. The two approached the couple, and the director pushed the girl in front of them. Mr. Turner, Mrs. Turner, this is Sophia. She then spoke to the girl. Little Sophia, they are your parents and are here to bring you home. Upon hearing the words, she finally focused her eyes on Rose. The woman was agitated and tried to hold back as she looked longingly at the girl. Her lips trembled because she wanted to reunite with the girl, but she was careful, fearing that the latter would resist. After some time, Sophia finally said, "Hello." She sounded distant and apathetic. Rose, nonetheless, did not sense that something was off. Unable to control herself, she hugged her daughter tightly and cried out loud, "My daughter, I've finally found you. You've suffered all these years." As the gentle and warm body leaned close to her, Sophia froze as she was not used to such intimacy. Yet she could not bear to push the woman away. While stuck in a dilemma, from the corner of her eye, she saw the man signaling the director and they both walked away. Gerald asked really softly, thinking that the girl would not be able to hear him, "Director, is little Sophia not well here?" He pointed at his head. The director hurriedly explained, "No, Sophia is really smart, super intelligent. She is a well-known genius in our orphanage, and since she is very engrossed in studying, she is slightly slower in social interactions." Genius. Gerald did not take it seriously and wished only that the girl was not dumb. He took a deep breath, and when Rose had collected herself, they got inside the car and headed home. Sophia looked out of the window in silence. Those messy streets and the orphanage's old gates slowly passed by her as the car moved. When the car took a turn, all those were no longer seen and the faint sadness of parting started to sink in. They did not notice that after they had left, a black, low-profile Land Rover slowly came to a stop at the orphanage's entrance. There were two people in the car. The chauffeur turned around and said, "General Brown, we're one step behind." The man on the backseat was sitting upright. His lower jaw appeared firm. The faint light in the car caused his near-perfect features to be covered with a layer of thin mist. His shrewd eyes made others terrified from the depths of their hearts, and they dared not to look at him in the eye. Jasper's well-defined, long fingers gently knocked against the handle twice. He coldly reminded the chauffeur, "Address me differently while we're outside." The chauffeur quickly changed his way of addressing. "Yes, boss." He could not fathom the man's thoughts and asked, "Do we just go to the Turner family and snatch the person?" Although the Turner family had a high status in Bin City and was influential there, its status could not hold a candle to this man. Unexpectedly, the man paused for a moment and replied, "No need to rush. The chauffeur was in a daze. They finally found the girl after searching for a long time, so why is the boss not anxious? While he was deep in his thoughts, he heard the man's orders. I'll personally follow up on her matters. Chapter 2. A few hours passed, and the car finally arrived at Bin City as it headed to the Turner family's home. Sophia looked curiously at the exquisitely renovated mansion. As Rose held her hand and walked through the entrance, the strange surrounding caused her to be at a loss. Just as they entered, a pungent alcoholic spray blew against their faces. The helper, Auntie Norman, was holding a can and spraying Sophia any which way while a gray-haired old lady instructed from the side, her hair, shoes, don't miss out any spot. Sophia instinctively covered her eyes, and Rose quickly covered her from the front as she exclaimed, Mom, what are you doing? Old Lady Turner's eyelids were drooping as she said harshly, God knows what kind of wild children the orphanage takes in. What if viruses and bacteria are brought in? Feeling both heartache and anger, Rose shouted, Mom. Old Lady Turner then sized up Sophia. The girl looked obedient, and as she lowered her eyes, her long lashes cast a shadow on her cheeks. Although she was beautiful, she seemed stupefied as though she did not hear her sarcasm. The old lady's eyes harbored intense disdain. Look at her pudding-headed look. Could she be dumb? Did you guys check clearly? You couldn't find her for 18 years, and now you're simply confirming it with a strange email. Gerald replied sternly, Mom, I checked the DNA and she is indeed my daughter. Don't say such things ever again. Also, she isn't dumb. After saying so, he pointed at the old lady and introduced her to Sophia. Little Sophia, this is your grandma. He then pointed to a delicate and charming girl beside the old lady, who was around the same age as Sophia, and said, This is your second uncle's daughter, your younger cousin, Tina Turner. Completely different from the hostile attitude she had toward Sophia, Old Lady Turner dotingly patted Tina's hand and said, Little Tina, stay away from her. There is something wrong with her brain. Don't let her spread it to you. Tina smiled in an appropriate manner and said, Grandma, you really know how to joke around. However, she took a step back and pinched her nose. Big Auntie, quickly bring cousin for a shower. Her look of disdain was clearly evident. Rose quickly turned to face Sophia. She thought the girl would be sad, yet the latter appeared calm as if she did not hear their conversations. Her heart ached as she brought the girl upstairs. Little Sophia, your father has to complete the procedures for your school transfer. I'll bring you upstairs to rest first. I personally decorated your room for you, but it was really rushed and I don't know what you like. Have a look first. If you don't like it, we'll change it afterward. The woman's actions were like a warm current injected into Sophia's dry, well-like, and cold heart. Opening the room's door and seeing what was going on inside, Rose was taken aback. What's happening? The helper was busy tidying up the beautiful, spacious room. There was a pile of clothes on the bed, but Sophia clearly had only just arrived. At this moment, Tina entered. Big Auntie, Grandma said you should let me have this room. You guys can choose other rooms. She then shot Sophia a provoking look. Her original room was not bad, but when she saw the princess-like room that Rose had prepared for Sophia, she was jealous. They were both daughters of the Turner family, so why should this country bumpkin live in a good room like this? Rose frowned and said, This can't work. Before she could finish speaking, Old Lady Turner's haughty voice was heard. Why not? Isn't it just a room? What's wrong with giving it to the younger sister? Rose was shocked. She knew that the old lady looked down on her as a daughter-in-law. Therefore, she would compromise out of consideration for the general interest and because she wanted to lead her life peacefully. However, this matter concerned little Sophia. She mustered all her courage and countered, Mom, I prepared this room especially for little Sophia. You can't be so biased. Old Lady Turner once again interrupted her. I'm biased. Little Tina is good at her studies and she is smart. When school reopens this year, she'll be in her last year of high school and it's the most important period for her national exams. This room has ample sunlight and great noise cancellation. It's called, putting it to good use, by letting her stay here. As for this dumb girl who came from the countryside, isn't it the same if you let her stay anywhere? Just find her a random room. Rose wanted to insist, but the old lady's face darkened and she raised her voice. Who is in charge of this house? Rose could not argue further. The person in charge of the Turner family was the old master, who was also in charge of the company. Although Gerald had been taking over some of the old master's work, old lady Turner still had the absolute say over family matters. Defeated, Rose balled up her fists with a grievance. "Little Sophia, I'll bring you to the other room." Sophia nodded. Staying anywhere was the same to her. Except, she looked nonchalantly at old lady Turner and said, "Does being good in studies mean being eligible to stay in a better place?" Her voice was exactly like her person, apathetic to the core. Old lady Turner was taken aback. "What?" Sophia retracted her gaze and was apathetic once more. 2 seconds later, she replied, "Nothing much." By the time she and Rose had gone to the other rooms, old lady Turner still had not returned to her senses. What did she mean by that earlier? Chapter 3. The second day. A group of students was gathering and looking on at Bin City International School's senior year, experimental class 1. "Is she the transfer student? I heard it's the Turner family's long-lost daughter who'd been missing for 18 years and was eventually found in an orphanage in the countryside. Country bumpkin. Would she be able to understand our classes taught by foreign teachers? Would she be able to cope with our dance classes? Also, we have piano classes, but has she ever touched a piano before?" Amid the taunting was an exclamation that did not fit in, "But she's pretty beautiful." Everyone turned to look at the last row of the classroom where the girl was reading a book. She sat there obediently as she held on to a set of assessment books. Her beautiful dark hair was pulled into a ponytail, exposing her fair and full forehead. Wearing the black and white school uniform, she exuded a scholarly aura, and though she was expressionless, her eyes were silently focused on the assessment books as mist lingered in her eyes. A few boys could not take their eyes off of her. Those who were studying in the international school were scions of wealthy families. Even though they were used to seeing beautiful ladies and celebrities, it was rare to find someone as beautiful as Sophia. Seeing the boys' good-for-nothing reactions, a girl suddenly said in a sharp voice, "Tina, why is your cousin ignoring others? Is she always so arrogant?" Upon hearing that, Tina shot a glance at a good-looking boy as her eyes fluttered. "Don't say that, my cousin only reacts slower. Since she's new here, I hope that everyone can help her in her studies." "React slower? I think she's just dumb. No wonder she looks slow-witted." The class monitor was unhappy as well. "If she's dumb, she shouldn't come to our experimental class. There's a pre-test today. What if she pulls down the class average score?" Class 1 was the entire school's elite class. Everyone who could get into the class was very arrogant. "If she's like this, why did she come to our class?" Suddenly someone speculated, could it be for Dylan? The moment this was said, everyone turned to look at the school hunk, Dylan Themes. Everyone in the social circle knew that there was infant matrimony between the Turner family and the Themes family. It was a classic marriage alliance between the rich and powerful. Since the Turner family's eldest young mistress was lost, the marriage arrangement fell onto Tina. Now that Sophia was back, could she be snatching Dylan back? Someone jabbed Dylan's shoulder and asked, "Are you really going to marry a dumb girl?" Dylan became more irritable as he clenched his jaw. Although he did not point it out, he sarcastically remarked, "How is it possible for me to like a slow-witted bass?" That person became excited instantly. "Are you going to break off the engagement?" Bang! All of a sudden, the teacher, Old Potter, entered the classroom and slammed the papers on the desk, interrupting them. The man, who was in his 40s, was frowning as he lectured them, "Look how a vacation made you guys so naughty. Are you done speaking? Let's put this across clearly first, the last 10 ranking students for this pre-test will have to clean the classroom for a week. Right now, tidy your desks. Class monitor, give out the papers." The shuffling sound of the papers instantly filled the classroom. The class monitor divided the papers into different stacks and passed down from the first row. The student who was sitting in front of Sophia passed the paper to her. "Hey." She only lifted her head 2 seconds later. She calmly took the paper and answered the questions as though she did not hear everyone's discussion earlier. Holding on to the question paper, Dylan could not read a single word. He frowned vexedly and turned around. This was a mathematics paper, and everybody was frivolously writing on the answer paper except for Sophia, who stared at the questions. She wrote down an answer every 10 seconds and was very disciplined. Within 10 minutes, she was already on the third page. 30 minutes later, she actually stood up to hand in the paper. A look of disdain surfaced in Dylan's eyes. Did she write her answers any which way? Hey, the Turner family had sent her to the senior year merely to buy a graduate certificate with a high price and send her overseas later on. After making a round, it would appear as though she was really great. This tactic was usually saved for those good-for-nothing scions. And he really hated worthless people like this. At the rostrum, Mr. Potter was invigilating, but his head hurt. According to hearsay, the Turner family's eldest young mistress learned the high school syllabus on her own, and there was something wrong with her head as well. Why did the school assign a bottom-of-the-barrel student to my class? However, I could neither hit nor scold her, which is really vexing. Now that she had handed in the paper in 30 minutes, did it mean she gave up completely? He sighed, and since it was boring to invigilate, he might as well mark the paper. Lowering his head, he found the answer sheet to be very clean, and the answers for the fill-in-the-blank questions had been written on it straight away. He wondered how many correct answers she could get. She chose C for the first question, and it was correct. The answer for the second question was B, and she was correct again. Could she be so lucky? The third question, the fourth question. As Mr. Potter looked on, he went into a daze. Sophia went downstairs slowly. She'd had an extraordinarily retentive memory since she was young and was deeply engrossed in learning different kinds of knowledge and skills. Everyone has his shortcomings and merits. Hence, she was slightly slower in social interactions. However, she was not dumb. She could sense the hostility coming from her classmates, so she left the classroom after finishing the paper, which was easy in her opinion. After leaving the school building, she felt the scorching heat outside. She paused in her footsteps and slightly regretted handing in the paper so early. There was quite a distance between the school and home. The Turner family would send a chauffeur daily to fetch her and Tina to and from school. Since it was a waste of time to go home and come back again in the afternoon, she decided to have lunch in the school canteen. However, it was only 10:30 a.m. and the canteen was not open yet. Looking outside, she decided to walk around the school's vicinity in order to familiarize herself with the place. Opposite the school and separated by the road was a row of old houses. She crossed the road and strolled along the quiet alley. On both sides of the alley were merchants selling all kinds of stationery and clothes. There were also some eateries, but since it was early, most were closed except for those selling breakfast. After walking for a while, she felt a little thirsty. Scanning her surroundings, she spotted an open store ahead and walked toward it. No matter what store it is, it should sell water, right? Inside the store, a tall man scanned the shelves coldly. His face was terrifyingly dark as he exuded an aura as though he was going to fly into a rage soon. Chris Connor, who was standing on one side, tried to play up to the man and said, "Boss, you're the one who told me to set up a store here in order for you to observe closer. I know it's inconvenient for you to be a store owner, but you can't get mad at me." Jasper shot him a glance. Chris continued to speak as he tried to seek merit. "I'd even surveyed the area especially. There are many stores selling clothes and food in the vicinity, so after the customers are full and satisfied, they would need to fall in love. That is when we'll come in." The man tried to suppress the urge to kick him out. "So you opened a sex toy shop?" Chris nodded. "If our business becomes prosperous, I might even earn some pocket money." Jasper replied coldly, "Do you think a high schooler will buy such a thing?" As he said that, the wind chime at the entrance rang, and Sophia, who was in uniform, entered. Chapter 4. The store that Sophia had entered appeared normal from the outside but was over 100 square meters on the inside. It was like a supermarket with several rows of shelves that were filled with goods. However, there was no customer in the store except for two men standing at the cashier, near the entrance. One of the men had two small canine teeth and seemed like the store assistant. He was trying to play up to the other man as though he had angered the latter. The infuriated man was wearing black pants with a black shirt, and he lowered his head while his fringe covered his sharp eyes partially. He had one hand in his pocket and the other sleeve rolled up, exposing his skinny arms. His well-defined fingers rested on the counter, and it was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. At this moment, both of them were staring straight at her. The canine teeth man's smile froze as though he had seen a monster. Sophia was stunned for a moment and thought that it was very strange. After a full 10 seconds, the odd atmosphere in the store was interrupted by the boss's weird tone. "Are you buying something?" His voice turned out nice sounding. She paused for 2 seconds before nodding her head. "Do you have mineral water?" "Yes." The man ordered. The canine teeth man, "Go get it." The canine teeth man finally returned to his senses. He snapped his fingers and scurried to the refrigerator in the corner. Very soon, a bottle of mineral water was placed on the counter. Lowering her head, Sophia opened her wallet and asked, "How much is it?" All of a sudden, it became dark. It turned out that the man had passed the bottle to her. His deep, charismatic voice rang. "Little kid, it's free." She lifted her head in surprise. The man was taller than she was by one head. Now that he was bending over, his arrogantly beautiful and exquisite face was only a few centimeters away from her. His deep, brown eyes were bottomless, and they made her feel apprehensive from the bottom of her heart. This person was highly dangerous. She needed to stay far away from him. She took a step back and, right at this moment, her mind suddenly became dazed as a warm current flowed through her heart. It was as though something had been awakened. Her chest became painful suddenly, as if something was stabbing it and twisting. Sophia bent down in pain, and a cold sweat broke out on her forehead. She could hear a faint mumbling sound by her ears, as if it was far away but near at the same time. "If you don't fall in love, you'll die. If you don't fall in love, you'll die." The pain was quickly intensifying, and very soon, she was in so much pain that she could not breathe. Just as her heart felt like it was going to be crushed, she came to and realized that this was not a joke. However, how could she fall in love in such a short period of time? At this point, a huge hand lifted her arm. She lifted her head and saw the cold man observing her. "Are you all right?" The world before her eyes grew dark, and right before she fainted from the pain, she grabbed the man's hand and said, "I have money and I can fight well. Be my boyfriend and I'll take care of you." The heart-wrenching pain eased slightly after she said those words. It was indeed useful. Sophia finally heaved a sigh of relief. SS's. The canine teeth man drew a deep breath and widened his eyes in shock, the water in his hand. When he saw her looking at him, he hurriedly signaled and said, "Don't worry about me, you guys can continue. There is actually someone in the world who is not fearful of death and actually confessed to our boss." Instantly, the flames of gossip were lit in his eyes. He wanted to exclaim excitedly and fished out his phone to live stream this scene for others to see. Who knew that something like this would happen to boss? Even if she is she as rich as the boss? Even if she fights well, is she better at fighting than the boss? Did this girl realize that they are monitoring her, so she came to purposely embarrass them? How will boss deal with her? Or will he just kidnap her, or kill her? The store had pin drop silence momentarily. Sophia could still feel the throbbing pain in her chest, but it no longer affected her thoughts. This man right before her eyes looked just like an average, good citizen. Could his fiendish aura come from being in the underworld? Also, this store looks so pathetic and should not be making much money. Therefore, my being rich and able to fight well should be enough to attract him, right? Sophia had thought it through clearly. Although she still had no idea what the voice was, falling in love would not cause her to lose a piece of her meat. It was more important for her to save her life first. However, this man did not respond even after some time. His eyes narrowed, and there seemed to be surprise in his peaceful eyes. Right, who would confess when it is their first time meeting someone? Just as she was wondering if there was enough time for her to look for another man should he not agree to it, the man finally spoke. "Jasper Brown." Sophia widened her eyes slowly. The man continued to say, "That's your boyfriend's name." Sophia was left speechless. The pain disappeared all of a sudden, and her relaxed body put her in a trance as though all that had happened earlier was her delusions. She stood dazedly on the spot until Jasper placed the bottle of mineral water in her hand. His deep voice seemed to have magic as he said, "Little kid, you should be going to school." After she left, the searing sun shone on her once more as she slowly turned to look at the store. Was everything earlier just a dream? What did that man do to me? What is going on? The school's dismissal bell rang and interrupted her train of thoughts. It was only then that she walked back to school while feeling lost. Inside the store, Chris walked to Jasper's side and said, "Boss, although you're a man of striking appearance and is way too good looking, she was clearly acting weird and harboring ill intentions. How could you agree to it? Could it be that you're attracted by her appearance?" The man shot him an icy stare, and Chris immediately stood up straight and shut his mouth. After having lunch in the school canteen, there was another round of examinations in the afternoon. After the last paper, Sophia handed in her answers early and was staring blankly downstairs for more than an hour. They took the car back home only after Tina was done with the papers. The chauffeur, Uncle Smith, had been working with Gerald for many years. As such, he was fond of Sophia as well. When he saw her keeping quiet once she got in the car, he asked concernedly, "Eldest young mistress, how was school today?" Sophia slowly turned her head to face outside and replied, "It's fine." PFF'd. Tina, who was beside her, could not help but dip her head and laugh. She then indirectly hinted, "Cousin, the grades and rankings will be out tomorrow." After saying that, she sized up Sophia from the corner of her eye. The girl looked out of the window, and her eyes had a layer of mist over them. She was especially quiet as though she did not hear the other girl's words. This irritated Tina. When the car passed by that same street, she suddenly realized that the store that she had visited in the afternoon had a sign that said, "Night Blooming Jasmine." A question arose in her mind. What does that store sell? The car drove and passed by the store quickly. Pondering over the question, Sophia did not see that Jasper, who was sitting lazily at the counter, seemed to have sensed her as he looked out. His sharp eyes were glowing. Chapter 5. On the way home, Sophia kept thinking about the strange happening today. Her pale fingers gently pressed against her chest. She was usually expressionless, but now, she had a look of confusion. Her body had been feeling fine since the afternoon when she was at school. However, the thought of the pain that she felt in the morning was still terrifying. If you don't fall in love, you'll die. Why did this happen? Even when she arrived at home, she still could not make sense out of it. Just as she was absent-mindedly heading upstairs, she heard Tina's surprised voice coming from behind. "Uncle Themes, Auntie Themes." She paused in her footsteps and realized that there were guests at home. The old lady smiled as she sat on the sofa in the living room while Rose sat beside her. The latter appeared to be battered out of her senses and her eyes were red. It was obvious that she had just cried. Opposite the three people were a middle-aged man and woman. The woman smiled at Tina before turning to look at Sophia. After sizing her up from head to toe, she pouted and made a flippant remark. "This is little Sophia. She looks quite beautiful." Sophia was stunned, and before she could reply, the old lady harumphed. "That's right, she grew up in the orphanage since she was young and has had no upbringing. She doesn't even know how to greet people and is slow-witted. She is unlike our family's little Tina, who has been sensible and hardworking since she was a child." Instantly, Sophia shut her mouth. Tina, on the other hand, smiled sweetly before running to sit beside her grandmother. She acted cutesy and hugged her grandmother's hand before fawning on and asking, "Uncle and Auntie, what brings you guys here?" The two immediately turned awkward and remained silent. Instead, the old lady said casually, "They're here to discuss the marriage arrangement between the two families. You're turning 18 years old soon, and once your birthday is over, I'll let you in the Themes family's boy." "Mom," Rose suddenly cut her off. "This marriage arrangement is for little Sophia, you can't do this." Old Lady Turner drooped her eyelids and said sternly, "The Themes family and ours are best friends. We'd set this marriage arrangement back then to ensure that both families can work together and get closer. If you insist on Sophia, aren't you harming the Themes family? We won't become united but will breed enmity then." Rose stood up all of a sudden and shouted with grievances, "Why will we be breeding enmity if little Sophia marries him?" She was upset that the daughter whom she'd recovered painstakingly was detested by others. The old lady, however, did not think she went overboard. Since you're asking, let me put it across clearly. We all know how outstanding Dylan is. He has always been the best at everything and has a promising future. But what about Sophia? How can a dimwit like her be worthy of Dylan? Do they have a common language? Will she be able to answer when Dylan discusses academic matters with her? When Dylan attends banquets, can she dance? Does she know how to play the piano? She knows nothing at all. If they get together, they will be the butt of jokes. But our little Tina has always been excellent. Little Tina and Dylan being together will be a perfect match. Rose could no longer argue. She tried to open her mouth, but before she could say anything, the old lady left her with no chance. She turned to look at Sophia. Sophia, what do you think? When the question was asked, everyone in the living room turned to look at her. Looking at them sizing her up, feeling conceited or being worried, Sophia furrowed her brows. Although she'd been back for only one day, she understood the situation of this family well. A biased grandmother, a powerless yet sincere mother, that evil younger cousin, and the Theme's parents who obviously looked down on her. How vexing are they? As for that Dylan, she noticed him during class today. However, he was nothing as outstanding as they said. Just his looks alone were way inferior compared to that of the man in the store. A look of impatience flashed across her beautiful eyes and she said slowly, "Leave it like this." After saying that, she looked away aloofly and headed upstairs, leaving them staring at each other speechlessly in the living room. Why does her attitude make it seem as though she couldn't care less about Dylan? Madame Themes frowned and was slightly upset deep down. After a while, the old lady laughed and said, "Since Sophia knows her own place, this matter is set. Let's discuss the children's engagement." The atmosphere lightened up instantly. It was unsuitable for Tina to stay on, so she stood up. "Please continue to chat. Cousin probably didn't do too well in her papers today as she handed them in only after half an hour. I'll go see if she needs help." Before heading upstairs shyly, she did not forget to tell tales about Sophia. Rose gritted her teeth and shot a glance at Madame Themes. Indeed, there was a look of disdain in the latter's eyes. She quickly explained, "The orphanage has only 9 years of mandatory education and little Sophia hasn't attended high school. It's normal if she doesn't know things. I'm thinking of getting her a home tutor." Old Lady Turner sneered and cut her off. "Is there any use in hiring a home tutor? I think that's just a waste of money and you should just spend it on getting little Tina more clothes. Our Turner family's children are all very intelligent. This child is so slow-witted, and coupled with your family's genes, she might even become mentally unsound in the future." Rose's face turned crimson red from the embarrassment. She balled up her fists as anger flashed across her eyes. My father was originally a university professor, but he suddenly had a mental disorder a few years back. Ever since then, the old lady, who is not fond of me to begin with, keeps being sarcastic to me. Now that she is cursing my daughter." She jumped out of her seat. "Mom, it doesn't matter what you say about me, but you can't speak of little Sophia like this." Hawk. Although the old lady was old, she was not slow at all. She gave Rose a tight slap and interrupted her. "You're revolting now. How dare you talk back to me in front of outsiders? We're going to discuss little Tina's marriage now and it's none of your business. Scram and head upstairs, stop being an embarrassment here." Rose's face burned as she looked at the old lady in disbelief. Momentarily, she covered her face and ran upstairs. Although the room that Sophia was staying in was not as beautifully renovated as the room that Rose had prepared, it was still spacious and bright. She threw her school bag on the desk in a slipshod manner and lay on the bed. With her hands behind her head, she stared blankly at the purple curtains moving with the wind. Perhaps because she grew up in an orphanage, she'd had no wild ambitions ever since she was young. Her only hobby was studying. She had a terrifying hunger for knowledge as though it had become a disease. However, all that she came across usually were too simple, and only advanced schools had more profound knowledge. Therefore, her goal was to get into the best university. Yet she still had to wait for another year. Just as she was deep in her thoughts, she heard the commotion downstairs. Realizing that Rose was still downstairs, she stood up and opened the door. It so happened that she saw Rose heading up. Rose paused in her footsteps and instinctively turned her head away. She did not want her daughter to see her like this. However, when she walked past Sophia, the latter grabbed her hand. Her eyes looked sharp and her voice was icy. "What's wrong with your face?" Chapter 6. Rose's heart squeezed and she nearly cried. Nonetheless, she quickly dipped her head and covered her swollen cheek. Trying to suppress her tears, she said, "Nothing much, little Sophia. I put on too much blush today. Why you go back to your room?" Sophia looked at her in silence and, after a while, calmly replied, "Oh." Just as Rose was about to feel relieved, the girl walked past her and headed downstairs. Her pupils constricted and she hurriedly ran up to the girl. "Little Sophia, little Sophia." Upon hearing the commotion, the people in the living room turned to look at them. Sophia walked right up to Old Lady Turner and remained expressionless. Her huge eyes appeared slightly slow-witted, but her voice was really icy. "Why did you hit her?" Old Lady Turner was taken aback. For a split second, she found this girl's aura to be startling, but she quickly returned to her senses. She was merely a girl who was of the same age as little Tina. That must have been her illusion. She sat comfortably on the sofa and lifted her head slightly before smirking. "She gave birth to a dimwit for our family and has embarrassed the Turner family thoroughly. I merely gave her a slap and that's lenient enough." By then, Rose had caught up to Sophia and blocked her from the front. "Mom, little Sophia isn't a dimwit." "Not a dimwit?" Old Lady Turner sneered. "If she's not a dimwit, why is she like this?" "Rose, don't feel aggrieved. I don't expect Sophia to be as outstanding as little Tina. As long as her grades are about the same as little Tina's, I'll definitely be courteous to you and treat you like my ancestors." Rose's lips trembled and she could not say a single word. At this moment, no need. Sophia had spoken all of a sudden. She looked determinedly at Old Lady Turner as she shot a quick glance at the fan couple before saying icily, "If my results are better than Tina's, you just have to apologize to my mother." After saying that, she brought Rose upstairs. It was only when they had disappeared at the staircase that Old Lady Turner returned to her senses. When her eyes met Madame Themes's observing eyes, she sneered. How can her grades be better than little Tina's? Wait until her next life. Sophia brought Rose back to her own room. Closing the door, she turned around and saw Rose's watery eyes. Feeling touched, the latter held her hand and said, "Little Sophia, are you finally calling me, Mom?" Sophia froze and replied without much expression, "Hem." Her voice had a hint of distance and awkwardness. She knew that her parents did not abandon her on purpose and she had no complaints about Rose, but they did not meet for 18 years, after all. She felt uneasy when her mother appeared all of a sudden. Seeing her like this, Rose did not push her further. She merely dipped her head and began repeating over and over again, "Little Sophia, I'm the one who let you down. I didn't take good care of you when I gave birth to you, causing you to be stolen." She choked. "Your father and I looked for you for so many years. When you're finally back home, you have to suffer through these grievances with me because I'm useless." Sophia was uncomfortable seeing her cry. She anxiously took out her tissue paper and passed it to Rose before standing there in a daze. After some time, Rose had finally had enough of crying and felt a little abashed when she calmed down. Placing the tissue paper down, she tried to force a smile with those red eyes. Her daughter's defense warmed her heart, but thinking of what had happened, she was fearful that the pressure on her would be too much. She then comforted Sophia. "Little Sophia, don't feel pressured and don't listen to your grandma's words. A person's grades don't represent if he or she is outstanding, do you understand?" Sophia nodded while feeling lost. Rose continued to console her. "In Mom's eyes, you're the best no matter what you do. I just hope that you can be safe and spend the rest of your life happily. Little Sophia, for your sake, I'll slowly grow stronger, so don't worry." Sophia replied, "Oh." Old Lady Turner's slap was not too hard and the swelling on Rose's cheek had subsided. Gerald neither noticed it nor did she mention it. After having dinner and lying down to rest, Gerald sighed. "It's all my fault for not knowing how to make Mom happy like the second child that you guys have to suffer through the grievances. Wait for a while more and we'll move out with little Sophia." Rose suddenly said, "I'm going to start painting again." She used to be a painter, but after losing the child, she became wasted and did not touch the brushes for years. Now that little Sophia was back, she had become a strong mother and needed to get back up again. The only reason that the old lady bullied them was simply that her parents were professors and she had no income. The next morning, Sophia, who did not get a wink of sleep, felt her chest feeling tight. However, she did not take it to heart. After washing up and having breakfast, she got in the car and headed to school. The nearer she got to school, the more evident the discomfort became. It was as though her heart was being squeezed by an invisible hand that was slowly tightening. When the car passed by Night Blooming Jasmine store slowly, the pain in her chest intensified. She instinctively shouted, "Uncle Smith, stop. CHH. The car came to a halt suddenly. Tina wobbled, and, after sitting down securely again, she could not help but say, "Sister, today is the day of results release, don't tell me you're trying to skip school to avoid it." Sophia could not be bothered with her at all as she quickly headed down. Stumbling, she walked toward Night Blooming Jasmine. Thinking while she still could, she suddenly had a thought. Could it be that she had to fall in love with that man for it to work? She could not switch to another man. With this thought in mind, she stopped in her tracks and randomly grabbed a male student in uniform who was walking past her. His hair was dyed red, and without even looking at how the boy looked, she asked straight away, "Hey, do you wanna fall in love?" The boy. Upon her saying that, the pain did not lessen but intensified further. It was useless. She quickened her steps and opened the door to Night Blooming Jasmine store. There she saw the tall man sitting behind the counter, and the pain quickly lessened once again. This meant that she had to fall in love with Jasper. Supporting the door frame, she looked steadily ahead. So, this issue indeed had something to do with Jasper. Could she have been drugged by him? Could he have casted a spell on her? Why was there such a bizarre thing in the world? Just as she was in a daze, Jasper gradually looked up. The store's air conditioner was strong, and the man was, once again, donning an all-black ensemble. He held a book in his hand as he sat there relaxedly. There was no expression on his face, and his eyes slowly landed on Sophia as he asked, "Little kid, why are you here?" Sophia kept silent for a moment. "To fall in love with you, Jasper." Their eyes met and there was complete silence. The store was oddly silent for half a minute. "Hooah!" Jasper laughed in a deep voice. That laughter was so low that it seemed to be lingering in Sophia's ears magically. This made her cheeks flushed. Having nothing to say, she tried to start a conversation. "What does your store sell?" After saying that, she looked at the shelves. The man lowered his eyes and replied, "This is a provision store. Last night, he got Chris to change everything in the store last minute." But, Sophia was curious. "When I came here yesterday, the shelves were full of small boxes. What were they?" Jasper slowly put down his book and leaned forward before saying in a serious tone, "Balloons." Chapter 7. In Sophia's mind, a question mark was slowly drawn out. Why would a provision shop have that many balloons? She did not question further, though. She simply had a nagging feeling that this provision shop was different from the rest she had seen before. Even its name was unique, Night Blooming Jasmine Provision Shop. She did not speak further on this. She did not even know Jasper, and this was only their second meeting. More importantly, she did not even know how relationships worked. However, if she did not speak, the dull pain in her heart would increase in intensity. Seeing that Jasper was reading his book and did not have any intention of speaking, she fought with herself internally before asking again, "Where is Canine Teeth?" Canine Teeth. Jasper cocked an eyebrow. Is she referring to Chris? This little kid has a unique way of giving nicknames. Jasper knocked his knuckles against the counter. He went to buy breakfast. At this moment, Chris walked in with breakfast. "Boss, time to eat." He first paused for a moment when he saw Sophia, greeted her with a, "Hey," then proceeded to lay out the breakfast he'd just bought onto the table beside. Jasper stood up and, instantly, his 180-centimeter tall stature towered over everything else, making the entire room feel slightly constrained and cramped. He walked to the dining table and casually asked, "Join us?" Sophia blinked. She felt a little ill when she woke up this morning and hence did not have much for breakfast. Moreover, the Turner family ate Western food with bread and milk in the morning. She grew up eating buns and congee at the orphanage, so she was not used to it and did not have much. She thought for a little, then nodded. All right. Chris watched in a daze as the young lady took a seat opposite his boss, reached for a bun, and started eating in a relaxed manner. Since when had anyone been this carefree and at ease in front of his boss? This little girl is not your average Joe. Sophia ate while surreptitiously sizing up the person opposite her. The man ate fast, but was not uncouth. Instead, he was elegant even. In the time it took for her to finish one bun, he had already gobbled up 3. Sophia ate faster, and when she was done, the pain she felt in her heart had totally vanished. She picked up a napkin to wipe her mouth, then asked, "May I leave now?" Jasper unhurriedly looked up. His dark brown eyes were glinting with a suppressed sharpness. "You can leave anytime." Sophia paused. This man emanated a dangerous and mysterious air, making one unable to see through him nor guess his intentions. Still, for now at least, he did not seem to be ill-intentioned. Many thoughts had sprouted in her mind the past 2 days. She considered making a police report. But what would she tell them? This man did something to me and forced me to date him. Never mind the police, she herself would not. She might even be treated as a loony. After playing with many ideas, she finally decided on taking no action to see what this man was up to. Everything had been fine from yesterday afternoon, until her chest started hurting this morning. Could this mean that she had to meet him every day to be in love and date him? "I'll come again tomorrow, okay?" she said questioningly. Jasper raised an eyebrow and his lips turned up slightly. "Up to you." Sophia walked out of the shop and toward the school. The classroom was in a mess. Despite being tortured by the examinations yesterday, the students who just came back from summer vacation were all still very boisterous. The paper yesterday was so hard. I actually couldn't do quite a few math questions. Isn't the question not in the syllabus? Dylan, did you find it hard? Dylan, who was already sitting in the first row, straightened his spine and replied in an arrogant manner, "It's still manageable." "Looks like you did pretty well." As expected, a curve wrecker is different. Sophia walked into the classroom amid the lamenting. The sun's backlight illuminated the girl's tall stature. Her hair was cleanly tied behind her head, and on her fair-skinned face, her large and beautiful eyes were slightly misted. Girls who were pretty naturally attracted the eyes and attention of all others. Even Dylan could not resist sneaking a few peeks. This furtive act was caught by Tina, who suppressed the disdain she felt and blabbered loudly, "Sophia, how were the exams for you yesterday?" Sophia paused in her tracks and looked toward her cousin. Although she did not express any emotion, her apathetic attitude made the latter feel as though her thoughts were seen through. Tina could not help but shift her eyes away in guilt. Sophia retracted her gaze and moved for her seat, leaving only 2 words behind: "It's manageable." Manageable. Dylan sneered. He raised his chin when everyone looked over and said, "The Chinese language is truly deep and profound." When he claimed it was manageable, it was with humbleness and certainty. As for someone else's, manageable, hey. Everyone could understand the underlying meaning of his words and instantly burst out laughing. That's true. Dylan would claim it manageable if he can't get full marks, but in Sophia's case, manageable would be just getting a 60. Isn't her standard for herself a little too low? Ha ha ha. Administrative Building Senior Year Mathematics Office. Following the ring of the bell, Class 1 civic tutor, Old Potter, picked up the mathematics papers and moved to leave. At this moment, the rest of his colleagues teaching other classes asked, "Old Potter, I heard that there is someone from your class who scored full marks." Old Potter paused in his footsteps and smiled so widely that his wrinkles appeared. "Yes." Someone lamented, "This exam tested something out of the syllabus just to give these rascals a blow in order to make them settle down and properly start studying. That mathematics paper is very challenging. Your class's Dylan is truly impressive. Looks like your class is going to be the first in the level on average again, isn't it?" Just as Old Potter moved to speak, Class 2 civic tutor, Ms. Smith, spoke. Class 1 is indeed very smart, but it can't be helped that there are laggards dragging the rest behind. Ms. Smith was a woman in her 30s. She smiled. "Mr. Potter, how did the transfer student in your class fare? Old Potter stopped when he heard this. Ms. Smith, I heard that the headmaster originally intended to put Sophia in your class. Ms. Smith gloated when this was mentioned. There were 2 experimental classes in the senior year, Class 1 and Class 2. The top 100 students in the level were randomly allocated to each class and, hence, the competition was stiff. When Sophia first transferred over, the Turner family only requested for her to be in an experimental class. The headmaster had originally planned to put the girl in her class. After all, the girl had issues and it was easier for a female teacher to communicate with her. However, Ms. Smith had firmly rejected it and pushed the responsibility to Old Potter. How could she possibly accept the yearly number 1 student being given to Old Potter but only the problematic young girl given to her? Moreover, with Sophia, she could pull down Class 1's average score and that will allow Class 2 to be the first, right? Ms. Smith thought about this and replied, yes. Our class was full. Old Potter's worry when he first received Sophia had been instantly swept away, and he grinned. Then I shall thank you. With that, he walked past Ms. Smith while humming a tune under his breath. Ms. Smith was stunned. Beside her, someone else had already run to Old Potter's desk to look at the summarized results slip. A gush ensued. The person who scored full marks this time is actually not Dylan. An ominous feeling rose in Ms. Smith's heart when she heard this. Who is it? Chapter 8. When Old Potter stepped into the classroom, the bell for the first class had yet to ring. He placed the thick stack of papers on the rostrum and said, Subject Rep, come distribute the papers. The entire classroom instantly fell silent. Sophia sat in the last row and watched as her classmates all stretched out their necks. As the subject representative distributed the examination scripts, intermittent sounds of gasp and sighs could be heard from every corner of the room. The subject representative, Brandon Sanchez, was studious and frail-looking. He wore a pair of thick glasses. He moved toward Tina's table and passed her script over. Someone asked curiously, how many marks? Checking her score, Tina answered in a light-hearted and proud tone, 127 marks. The questions were so hard, yet you actually scored so highly. She feigned humbleness. Nah, I'm still lacking when compared to Dylan. How can you compare yourself to Dylan? He has been receiving uncountable awards from mathematics competitions since he was young. Still, you and he are truly a match made in heaven. Both of you have such good grades. Tina seemed accustomed to the surrounding gasps and praises. She lifted her chin and subconsciously peered at the last row. She asked hypocritically, Brandon, hurry and see how my cousin scored, all right? Brandon flipped through the papers and did not spot Sophia's. Instead, he saw Dylan's first and hurriedly picked it out. He was about to pass it to Dylan when, on the rostrum, Old Potter said, for this mathematics paper, the only full mark student in the entire level is in our class. Wow, isn't Dylan too incredible? While everyone was gushing, Dylan silently heaved a sigh of relief. During the examination yesterday, there were quite a few that he was unsure about. Looks like I did it all correctly. Congratulations, Dylan. You are amazing. Tina's voice rang beside him. He looked up at her with a smile. When he returned home yesterday and was informed that his arranged marriage partner had been changed to Tina, he had let out a breath of relief. For a person like him, only the best and most outstanding girl could be matched. 127 marks. It hits the passing mark. At this moment, Brandon landed his paper on his table right in front of him. He instinctively looked at the scores and his smile froze. 138. What's wrong? Did I receive the wrong paper? While everyone was still confused, Old Potter sucked in a deep breath and said the following, let us congratulate student Sophia. Her foundations in mathematics are very solid. Even though the questions this time around were exceptionally hard, her results are also totally unexpected. It is a whole 12 marks higher than the second place, Dylan. In the next instant, it felt as if a pause button had been pressed on the entire classroom. A perfect silence prevailed. After a full 2 seconds, everyone then turned to look at the girl in the last row in unison. Dylan widened his eyes in shock and disbelief. When he turned back to look at the girl, he saw her slowly look up. Her eyes started to focus on him. A meaningful smile slowly crept up her lips as she silently mouthed the words, "Still manageable." Dylan's cheeks instantly blazed, as though someone had given him a tight slap. Similarly, Tina also froze, and all she could think of was, "How can this be? How can it be?" End of class. Old Potter finished reviewing the examination paper right at the ring of the bell that signified the end of class, and he promptly exited the classroom. In the next moment, the classroom instantly exploded with noise. Screech. It was the sound of a chair being dragged against the floor. The person seated in front of Sophia turned around and leaned against her table as though she had no bones. "Hey, Sophia, right? I'm Hannah Nelson." The girl had a head of pink hair and her makeup was exaggerated, as though she came from a 2D world. She was chewing gum and even blew out a bubble right after saying this. Sophia looked at her curiously, then replied, "Hello." Hannah whipped out her phone when she received a reply and babbled loudly, "Everyone in our school's forum is now debating whether Dylan can keep his #1 position. Ha ha, I have always disliked Dylan and Tina, those two. They always act so arrogantly. What is there to be proud of when all they have are slightly better grades?" Sophia. Oh, an overly familiar and talkative person. This was her first impression of Hannah. Hannah did not mind her uninterested reply and continued on her own. "I heard that the Themes family reneged on your arranged marriage because they felt that your results were terrible. Then, can you clinch #1 in overall results? That way, you can give him a tight slap on his face." And a gossipy one. The next class was literature. As she was the subject representative, Tina's first instinct when she received the papers was to look at Sophia's marks. When she saw the marks written on top, she immediately let out a breath of relief. She intentionally walked over to pass the paper to Sophia and coincidentally heard Hannah say this. "Hence," she said, "Dylan excels not only in mathematics. He excels in every subject." With that, she passed Sophia's paper over to her. 102 marks. "Cousin, looks like your grades are severely imbalanced. You already have a 30-mark difference from Dylan in one subject and you still have a pipe dream of being first. Stop dreaming." Pock. Hannah's chewing gum bubble burst. She cocked her head at Tina. "I don't know if Sophia will score better than Dylan, but it will definitely be higher than yours. Where does your pride come from?" Rendered speechless, Tina only retorted back after a short pause, as the first from the bottom, "You would, of course, not feel any pride." "No." Hannah grinned. "I'm proud to be the first from the bottom." Tina. She turned around and left huffily. The teachers had burned the midnight oil last night, marking the papers and individually collated them today. The ranking and scores were finally out when afternoon classes ended. After the grade reports were pasted on the wall in front, everyone squeezed to take a look the moment classes ended. Sophia did not partake in this, though. To her, things such as grades were not important. Hence, she picked up her bag and walked out the door. In the classroom, Dylan and Tina had not left. They were packing their bags as they eyed the front of the class. While both of them held themselves in high regard and deigned to squeeze with the crowd, they were still extremely curious about the ranking this time around. When most of the crowd had dispersed, Dylan finally walked over. His gaze landed on the utmost left column of the first row. Alas, he, who had hogged the first spot usually, was currently in a different spot. He was stunned. Beside him, Tina was going bonkers. At 6:30 p.m., the car slowly drove through the Turner family's gates. Sophia moved to open the door the moment the car stopped, but a piercing voice sounded. "Are you very happy?" She paused, only to see that Tina's eyes were red and brimming with tears. The latter shouted, "You pretended to be a dimwit to see me and Dylan make a fool out of ourselves. Are you satisfied now?" Sophia was taken aback. Is this person's brain fine? Before Sophia could reply, Tina had already alighted from the car and ran into the mansion. When Sophia alighted and followed her path into the living room, she immediately heard Old Lady Turner's anxious voice. "Little Tina, what's the matter?" Not speaking a word, Tina ran upstairs and locked herself in her room. Old Lady Turner was anxiously and worriedly circling outside her door. "What happened? Why are you suddenly crying?" "Oh, right. The results are out today. Did Sophia bully you out of jealousy because you scored better than she did?" Sophia, who had just walked in. Chapter 9. Sophia changed her slippers and was about to go back to her room when Rose walked out from the kitchen, dressed in a purple dress. Looking every bit like a cultured and sophisticated person, she smiled gently at Sophia and waved her over. When the latter reached the dining area, she then passed a small and exquisite-looking bowl over to her and said in a soft voice, "Little Sophia, are you hungry? This bird's nest soup is fresh out of the pot. I have added honey and milk inside. Have some." Her attitude made Sophia feel warm as she received the food and took a mouthful. It was a little fishy, but the milky scent and honey resulted in a sweet aftertaste. She was planning to finish it when a bellow erupted from the staircase. "Eat, eat, eat. All you know is to eat. Didn't you see how much little Tina is crying?" Rose was startled as she tensed up. She then pacified the old lady, "Mom, she's a child. It's normal for there to be things that upset her. I'll accompany you to appease little Tina." She circled past Sophia after saying this and was just about to go upstairs. However, old lady Turner suddenly stopped and swept her gaze past Sophia with hostility. When she spotted the bowl in the latter's hands, her eyes widened as she roared, "Who gave her bird's nest soup? That is specially made for little Tina." Rose hurriedly explained, "Mom, I know. Little Tina's is still being kept warm in the pot. I made 2 portions today and will give the other portion to little Tina soon." Tina had a portion of bird's nest every day. This was her habit. Since both were daughters of the Turner family, Rose felt that it was Sophia's right to have 1 portion every day too. Yet, what she did not expect was old lady Turner's following rampage. "Little Tina has bird's nest every day because she studies so diligently every day and needs proper nourishment. With Sophia's pea brain, giving her some is simply wasteful. You will not make it for her again." Rose was totally dumbstruck. To the Turner family, bird's nest was a very average expense. They would even let the servants at home have some when they had leftovers. Still, she never expected in her entire life that the old lady would be this stingy toward Sophia. Sophia eyed the bird's nest soup in her hands. She never craved any of such things in her life. After all, at the orphanage, all she asked for was to have a full tummy. She put the bowl down on the dining table and moved to go upstairs. At this moment, the old lady blocked her path again. "Also, tell me, did you bully little Tina and make her cry?" Rose flailed her arms. "How can that be? Little Sophia is..." Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by a hum. She turned to look at Sophia together with old lady Turner. Sophia decidedly abandoned her plan to go upstairs. Her eyes, which always seemed shrouded in mist, turned to the old lady. "Looks like I really did." With a vicious look, old lady Turner berated, "I knew it was you. You lunatic. Tell me, what the hell did you do to little Tina? Why is she crying?" The girl paused for 2 seconds. "Perhaps it's because I got better grades than she did." "What?" Old lady Turner was stunned. She even suspected her hearing of being faulty. Her grades are better than little Tina's. That's not possible. Sophia flung the bag she was carrying to the front, retrieved the final grade report, and passed it to old lady Turner. The old lady instinctively reached for it. On it were the results of every subject. Mathematics, 150 marks. Science aggregate, 288 marks. English, 140 marks. Literature, 102 marks. Old lady Turner, who frequently flaunted Tina's results to everyone else, naturally knew what these grades meant. She stared at the dimwit and dumb granddaughter in disbelief. Sophia gently and suavely hooked the dining chair over with her foot. The chair rocked a little and stopped before her. She then pressed down on Rose's shoulders, asking her to sit down before she turned to the old lady. "Now, it's time for your apology." "Apology?" Old lady Turner instantly recalled the girl's words from yesterday. "No need. If my results are better than Tina's, you just have to apologize to my mother." Old lady Turner's face turned red with anger as her entire body trembled. Apologize to this useless daughter-in-law? Especially in front of the servants? Impossible. The old lady frowned and suddenly clutched her chest. "Ayo, ayo." Beside her, Auntie Norman instantly got her hint and moved forward. "Old madam, is your angina acting up again? I'll help you back to your room to rest." Yes. With Auntie Norman supporting her, Old Lady Turner escaped the dining area in dismay. Sophia. It was only when dinner time arrived that the old lady and Tina came down again. Today, the old patriarch, Darren Turner, had finally finished dealing with an acquisition project and returned home for dinner. Hence, the dining table was filled for today. Sophia sat beside Rose. It was her first meeting with her supposed paternal grandfather. Darren was a conservative elder. Despite being 70 years old, he was still a stern person. He first sized up Sophia, then nodded with an ambiguous attitude. "It's good as long as you're back." After which, he swept his gaze across the rest of the house. He spotted Tina's reddened eyes but did not point it out. Instead, he turned toward Old Lady Turner and asked blandly, "Did anything happen at home in the past few days?" The old lady answered, "No." "Are you sure?" The old lady was taken aback, unsure what he was referring to. Darren continued staring at her. "Did you forget to apologize to Rose?" This one sentence made the old lady tense up, as though she would flip the table in the next instant. How did Darren know about this? She balled up her fists, feeling a severe sense of shame looming over her. She did not dare to go against the old patriarch and could only look at Rose in a disgruntled manner, saying, "I should not have hit you for that day's events." Rose was frightened when she spotted the anger and condemnation in the old lady's eyes. She knew that this time, she had thoroughly offended the old lady. Still, she could not back down now. She had conceded in every way she could in the past only because she did not want to make things difficult for Gerald. However, now, she had Sophia, and so she had to protect her. The next morning, when Sophia woke up, Rose came over happily and knocked on the door. "Little Sophia, your maternal grandmother is here." The two of them descended down the stairs. Sophia quickly spotted an old lady with a head of white hair sitting on the sofa in the living room cautiously. She was donning a traditional-looking Chinese-style jacket and had a kind smile on her face. Old Lady Turner was seated opposite her. Her eyes were droopy, and she clearly looked down upon the former. Granny Morris, whose name was Daisy Simpson, stood up in agitation when she spotted Sophia. Her frail and wrinkled hands tightly held on to the latter's hands as she said with reddened eyes, "My good child. We finally found you." Rose introduced her to Sophia. "Your maternal grandmother's house is not in Bin City. We originally intended to bring you over to visit them during the weekend, but your granny already could not wait and came over first instead." "Oh," Sophia replied. She then turned to look at Daisy and obediently called her, "Granny." While the trio were chatting, Old Lady Turner suddenly cut in, "Rose, the servants don't know what your mother likes. Go brew a cup of tea for her personally." Flattered, Rose nodded, "Yes." As she moved for the tea cabinet, Old Lady Turner shot a glance toward Auntie Norman, who then nodded back. Slow on the uptake, by the time Sophia realized that something was amiss, Rose's loud shriek was already heard. Chapter 10. Despite being slow when it came to interpersonal relationships, Sophia was very nimble and agile. She swiftly arrived the moment she heard the shriek. When she saw Rose standing there unhurt, she let out a breath of relief first before spotting the half-spilled container of tea leaves. At this moment, Old Lady Turner drew a deep breath and exclaimed, "Rose, you are in huge trouble." Rose was utterly petrified as she explained in a stutter, "Mom, I didn't do it on purpose. It dropped down the moment I opened the tea cabinet." Auntie Norman shook her head and sighed. "Madam, you are too careless." Old Lady Turner seemed to panic as she berated, "What else can you do other than eat and drink every day? I only asked you to brew a cup of tea and you can make this huge mess. Do you know that your father-in-law especially bought this back for an important use?" Rose stared at the tea in shock. Old Lady Turner continued chiding, "You useless piece of trash, what use is there in putting on a crying look? Tell me, what have you ever brought into this house? You can't even give birth to a son. You are simply a hen that cannot lay eggs." Her words became even more vile. Sophia frowned and was just about to speak when a stern voice sounded, "Demi, you'd better shut your mouth." Daisy rushed over and immediately blocked Rose from her view. As the matriarch of a high society family, do you think you are speaking humanely? Our Rose has been well versed in classical Chinese poetry, songs, and essays since she was young. She did not marry into your nouveau riche family to be bullied. Nouveau riche. Sophia was a little taken aback. It seemed that her maternal grandmother was not lacking in the bickering department too. Old Lady Turner choked on her own saliva. Her momentum was instantly cut in half. Can't I even scold her a little as her mother-in-law when she has made a mistake? Daisy retorted, isn't it just a little bit of spilled tea leaves? Is there a need to be this alarmed? I'll just go buy some back for you again. Rose hurriedly tugged her mother. Mom. On the contrary, Old Lady Turner gloated as she nudged her lips. Just a little bit of spilled tea leaves. Do you know what tea this is? This is Wuyi Mountain's Da Hong Pao. Daisy replied resolutely, as long as it is sold somewhere, there will be a way to purchase it. Old Lady Turner revealed a smirking expression. Fine. I shall put it up front that this tea is something our old man requested someone to bring over. We have use for it this weekend. If you guys are unable to buy it back, you'd better wait to explain matters to our patriarch. With that, she moved for the dining area with Auntie Norman supporting her. A gloating look shone in her eyes. Didn't the old man just back her up yesterday? I shall see how she gets punished now that she has ruined his big plans. It was only when Old Lady Turner had left that Daisy realized that something was amiss. Little Rose, Rose hurriedly halted her with a glance. She then turned to look at Sophia, who had been staring at them silently. She did not want to make her daughter needlessly be implicated with them. Tina had already finished breakfast and was currently standing at the side restlessly and in frustration. Are you gonna move or not? Rose forced a smile out, then went to the kitchen to pack some breakfast for Sophia. Little Sophia, go to school first. Your granny is not leaving today, so you can chat with her again at night. Oh, Sophia answered, eyeing her. She then followed Tina out the door. When both of them were gone, Daisy then inquired in a soft voice, the tea just now. Rose let out a bitter smile. Mom, the remaining 6 origin trees of this tea have already been protected since 10 years ago. They are no longer allowed to be harvested, so the tea leaves are now a priceless treasure. My father-in-law spent 880,000 yuan to buy this paltry 100 grams in an auction just to gift it to Elder Walker this weekend. Our company will need Elder Walker's help in the following project. Elder Walker was the wealthiest businessman in Bin City. It was public knowledge that he loved tea. Daisy was stunned when she heard this. 880,000 yuan only for 100 grams. Rose stared at the tea leaves on the floor once again. Her father-in-law viewed these tea leaves as though it were as important as his own life. Now, even if one were willing to spend $1 million, they would still be unable to buy this. She did not expect Old Lady Turner to use this to take revenge on her. How would she explain herself to her father-in-law tonight? As usual, Sophia alighted at Night Blooming Jasmine and entered the provision shop. Sitting behind the counter, Jasper lazily raised his head. He seemed to like black clothes a lot. He had changed into a different shirt today. The top button was unbuttoned, revealing his sexy collarbone. Despite that, his stern and straight-laced face gave off an ascetic aura. He stood up and walked toward the dining table when he saw her enter. As he passed by her, he lowered his head slightly and said, "Little kid, you're late." Late. Sophia eyed the clock, realizing that she was 3 minutes later than yesterday. However, the pain in her heart today was actually not as acute as it was yesterday. Was it because she had been thinking of coming here since she stepped out of the house today and was not going against the idea of seeing Jasper? After all, people who were in love would likely desire to meet each other. With this thought in mind, she took a seat opposite the man. On the table, Canine Teeth had already placed the breakfast. When the 3 of them were done eating, he cleaned up the table. After Sophia had finished the soya bean drink, she placed it on her left-hand side. As Canine Teeth was on her right side, he was feeling too lazy to reach out for the bottle. Hence, he said to her, "Pass that soya bean drink bottle to me." Slow to respond, Sophia paused for 2 seconds before reaching for the bottle again. Alas, as Jasper saw that she did not move, he had reached out too. Consequently, just as she touched the bottle, her hand was caught by Jasper too. Both of them stilled. Sophia stared blankly at their hands, which were holding each other. The man's palms were huge and his nails were clean and neat. Yet his palms were hot, scalding, even. The heat seemed to travel from her hands to her cheeks. She hurriedly retracted her hands and glared at him hostilely. What did this man do to me again? My heart seemed to have stopped for a second there, but it seems fine now again. She put on an empty expression and picked up her bag. I'll be off to school. Tisk. With that cluck of his tongue, the man pushed himself up with both hands on the table. He then bent at the waist closer to her. Little kid, you're leaving right after eating. Sophia was lost. What should I do if not leave? Does he mean? Scouring the empty shop with her eyes, she had an epiphany. I should give him some business. Recalling the tea leaves Rose had spilled today, she asked, do you have Wui Mountain Da Hong Pao here in your provision shop? Chris, who had gone out to throw the trash, almost fell down headfirst when he heard this upon returning. Wui Mountain Da Hong Pao. Is that something you can buy in a provision shop? He was just about to speak when he saw his boss smile lightly. I have 150 grams. Is that enough? Sophia nodded. Rose had spilled 100 grams, so there should not be any problem if she bought 150 grams back. How much is it? She asked. The market price was already 800,000 yuan for 100 grams. If it was 150 grams. Jasper's dark brown eyes twinkled as he gave her a discount. 1. How expensive? Sophia, who usually had a long response loop, exclaimed, causing Jasper to swallow the word million he had yet to utter. In Sophia's eyes, the tea leaves that the principal of the orphanage drank was only 15 yuan for a pack. Yet this Da Hong Pao actually cost 100. She eyed the pathetic and desolate provision shop again. Forget it, I'll take it even if it's overpriced. His business is hard too. Sophia picked out 200 yuan from her wallet and placed it before Jasper. You don't need to give me change. You can keep the remaining 100 as breakfast money. Chris. Chapter 11. Jasper's usual calm expression seemed like it was about to crack. However, he regained his composure in just under 2 seconds. He first smiled, then received the 200 yuan, saying, the tea leaves are in the storage room. Come get it after school. All right. The straightforward Sophia turned around and left. When she spotted Canine Teeth's complicated expression, she silently sighed inside. Canine Teeth must also be thinking about how terribly black-hearted his boss is, right? But that's fine. Gerald gave me a bank card and there is 100,000 yuan inside. I am very rich. She did not mind helping Jasper within her means. Moreover, if he was happy, she might even have a chance of quickly ridding herself of the be in love or die curse. After her departure, Chris's mouth twitched as he asked, Boss, since when did we have Da Hong Pao in our storage? The storage held only the whole stash of small boxes that were previously displayed on the shelf on the first day. Jasper gave him a side eye. Give little Walker a call. You'll go get it. Chris, yes. Right after replying, he could not help but remark, Boss, old Walker is already in his 60s. Can't you call him old Walker? With little Walker. Upon receiving his boss's gaze, he instantly changed his tune, you're making yourself sound old. Jasper ignored him and went to the back of the cashier, picked up a book, and continued reading. When Sophia entered the school compound, an Audi was coincidentally parked at the entrance. Dylan was about to alight when he spotted the passing silhouette. Stunned, he stopped. Mrs. Thames, who had personally sent her son to school, failed to notice his anomaly. She spewed out the words she had held back for an entire night. Why did you get only the second place this time? Dylan kept up his stoic expression and did not answer. Mrs. Thames could not resist complaining, you didn't relax at all during the summer, so it's impossible for you to not have done well. Did that dimwit from the Turner family harass you on the day of the exams and so you got this result? Fortunately, we have already changed your partner for the arranged marriage. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. If you get married to that dimwit, you will only get worse from here. Dylan repressed his raging emotions and pushed open the car door in frustration. I'm going off to school. Oh, Mrs. Thames replied, then continued asking, who got the first place this time? Is it Tina? You guys are engaged, so it's fine if she is first for this once. Dylan had already alighted. When he heard this, he halted and slowly turned around. Looking at his mother, he did not know why, but he said the following, "It's Sophia." "Indeed, it's Sophia what?" Mrs. Thames was stunned. Dylan looked away. He did not understand why he was suddenly rebellious, just that he was suddenly very annoyed with his mother's nagging. Moreover, why did she not consult him first before she went to the Turner family to renege on the marriage? The first lesson was old Potter's. As the civic tutor, he pointed out a few issues regarding discipline, as was his habit. At the end, he pointed out, "Hannah, didn't I tell you to dye your hair back yesterday?" The person seated in front of Sophia was sprawled on her desk, seeming to be unafraid of anything since she was already in the worst situation. "Sir, I need money to dye my hair. My parents confiscated my bank card. Do you perhaps want to help me to ask for it back?" Old Potter was so furious that he pointed at her for a long time. Finally, he sighed. "During the break later, you and Sophia shall come to my office." Upon hearing her name, Sophia looked up in confusion. "Why am I being called?" 2 periods flew by in the blink of an eye. Sophia finally understood how much of a headache the person seated in front of her caused the teachers. She slept during the whole lesson, and once she was done with that, she whipped out her phone to play games. When old Potter asked her to answer a question, she would immediately respond, saying that she did not know and to find someone else. The English teacher in the second period had already given up on her. The teacher did not even glance at her. After the first 2 periods, all other students went to the field for some morning exercises and stretches. Meanwhile, Sophia was making her way to old Potter's office. She looked at Hannah, whose head was still lowered and was playing games. She knocked on her table. "Aren't you going to the teacher's office?" Hannah answered with a smile. "No, old Potter won't do anything." Sophia paused, then asked, "Then where is Mr. Potter's office?" Hannah stilled upon hearing this. Seeing her lost expression, she locked her phone and stood up. "Forget it, I'll bring you there." Along the way, Hannah fully displayed her gossipy temperament. Old Potter is very scared of his wife. He has to hand in his salary every month and still rides a very old and wonky bicycle to work every day. Oh, the two entered the office and stopped before Mr. Potter. Old Potter first smiled at Sophia. "Sophia, wait just a moment." He then pulled open his drawer and retrieved something wrapped in a newspaper. He slowly unwrapped the newspaper. There were some small coins inside, 5 yuan, 10 yuan. Old Potter stuffed the money into Hannah's hands. "I don't know how much you'll need to dye your hair, but 500 should be enough, right?" Hannah was stunned. She mumbled, "Old Potter, these must be from your secret nest egg, right? Aren't you afraid that I'd squander it at an internet cafe if you give it to me?" Old Potter laughed. "I've already given you the money, so it's your choice what you want to do with it." A conflicted look appeared in the girl's rebellious eyes. In the end, she still accepted the money and left. "Fine, then I shall go to the internet cafe now." After Hannah had left, another teacher spoke. "Mr. Potter, why are you bothering with her? Even her parents have already given up on her, but you still." Old Potter sighed. "If I don't care about her, no one else will." Sigh. After that, he turned to look at Sophia. "Sophia, I called you here because I wanted to ask you, are you interested in joining the Mathematical Olympiad?" Mathematical Olympiad? Sophia stared blankly and silently. Old Potter continued, "The examinations portion for the Olympiad is definitely harder. Our school has structured training classes. If you take part, you will have to go for classes to learn deeper knowledge." "Can learn." Sophia's eyes lit up as she nodded. "Okay." Old Potter passed her a registration form. "All right, then, go fill up this registration form. In another week, there will be a non-official mathematical invitational game. You can gain some experience there. After that, every weekday afternoon during the last 2 self-revision periods, go to classroom 301, which is near the staircase, for the Olympiad training class." "All right." Sophia exited the office and spotted Hannah leaning against the wall and playing her game. Seeing that she had come, the latter then smiled and said, "Let's go." It was only when they had returned to the classroom that Sophia realized that Hannah had been waiting for her just now. At this moment, someone in the classroom spotted the Olympiad registration form in Sophia's hands and exclaimed, "Sophia, are you going to take part in the mathematical Olympiad?" "In our class, I think only Dylan is participating in the mathematical Olympiad then. Won't you have to go to the extra classes with Dylan during the last 2 periods every day?" The entire class fell into a pin-drop silence the moment this was said. After who knows how long, someone chimed in, "Don't tell me you still haven't given up on Dylan." Chapter 12. Everyone turned to look at Tina and Dylan in unison. Feeling the crowd's gaze on her, Tina sat up and smiled at Dylan. "What will you do if Sophia harasses you?" Dylan raised his chin. "Our engagement is already settled, so it will not change again." Tina was instantly relieved. She had grown up with him and they had always had an ambiguous relationship. Now that their engagement was being pushed forward, she believed that he would not feel anything for that dimwit or switch the recipient of his affections. The pair's voices were not too loud or soft, just enough for those around to hear them. Someone mockingly sneered, "Even if she's first, she still can't get Dylan's heart back. If I were her, I would keep a far distance away. Why is she so shameless as to keep prancing toward Dylan?" Sophia's eyes turned cold, but before she could speak, Hannah spoke first. "Some people are just too bored out of their minds. All they do is monitor someone else's petty matters." She was good at bickering, and her tone sounded good, even. The few people who commented instantly shut their mouths. Hannah then looked at Tina and Dylan, then sneered. "There are also some others who regard themselves too highly." No one in the classroom replied. In terms of speech, no one could beat her. Seeing that Hannah had settled the issue in just 2 sentences, Sophia nodded at her in gratitude and went back to her seat. Meanwhile, Hannah turned around and walked out. The class president asked, "Hannah, class is about to start. Where are you going?" Hannah whipped her head around and blew out a bubble from her chewing gum. "Internet cafe." Sophia paused. For the rest of the day, Hannah did not return. Time quickly sped by and it was almost time for the afternoon self-revision class. Dylan packed up and prepared to go for the extra classes. Tina also stood up. She was participating in the physics Olympiad, and, hence, she also needed to go for extra classes at this time. Her class was beside the mathematical classes at classroom 302. The two of them reached the door and noted from the corner of their eye that Sophia had also belatedly stood up after them. As she walked over to them, Tina could not help but ask, "You can't possibly ignore her if she harasses you and clings to you to talk, right?" Dylan fell silent, seeming to be conflicted too. "That's true." He subconsciously slowed his footsteps. When Sophia slowly caught up to them, the two had already reached the staircase. Just as they were having a hard time deciding if they wanted to respond, Sophia looked to the front and walked by them, as though they were non-existent. Forget about greeting them, she did not even glance at them. Both Dylan and Tina stalled their footsteps and felt an inexplicable awkwardness. When Sophia reached the classroom, she found that there were only around 10 odd students inside. She found a seat and sat down. Soon, old Potter walked in and he first reviewed a few competition questions, then made everyone else continue practicing other questions. He then walked over to Sophia and passed her a paper. "Do this first. I need to gauge your level." Sophia nodded, then started on the paper. Dylan sat a short distance away from her and could not help but take note of what she was doing. He had done the set of questions old Potter had passed to her. Its difficulty matched the current competition's difficulty level. Although there were only 3 questions, the required knowledge was huge. As an experienced competition contestant, he had answered all 3 questions correctly. Sophia finished the paper quickly. She finished the paper, which usually required 2 hours to complete, in an hour. This made Dylan's heart sink. Old Potter marked the paper on the spot and gave her the result. Fail. All 3 questions were wrong. Dylan let out a huge breath of relief when he heard this result. A sense of superiority instantly burst in him. As expected, just because she is good at math does not mean that she will do well in the competition. After all, the Olympiad questions are difficult and complicated. They require a higher level of logical thinking. Moreover, I had underperformed for this exam. I will definitely be able to snatch back the first place in the next exam. On the other side, Sophia dazedly stared at the 3x on her paper. She asked in confusion, how can it be wrong? In order to not affect the rest of the students, old Potter softly answered her, you did all 3 questions correctly, but during the actual examination, everyone will judge these as wrong. Do you know why? Sophia shook her head. Old Potter sighed. Calculus is a university subject. Where did you learn it? Sophia, by myself. Old Potter was internally shocked. He then continued to explain, in the high school competition, you are tested on logical thinking. In other words, it means that you have to answer these questions using high school knowledge. You answered everything correctly, but your method is outside of the syllables and not the knowledge we had specifically laid out. Sophia looked up at him. Her misty eyes were filled with a sense of being wronged and feeling aggrieved. You can play this way. Old Potter reassured her. It's fine. It's fortunate that we found out the problem early and it's not too late yet. I will map out some of the important key points for you, so you can take a look. He paused for a while, then continued, you can also ask Dylan if you have any problems. Sophia, oh, she looked at the paper on the table. She had never done such questions before. If she abandoned the calculus portion and other university-level knowledge, it did seem to be a little more challenging. Still, she found it interesting. 2 lessons were soon over and old Potter announced the end of classes. Sophia then packed up. Dylan stood at the entrance and his gaze involuntarily followed her silhouette. The girl was tall and thin. Her footsteps were light. The ponytail on the back of her head would swing in tandem with her gait. Under the sunlight, her ears seemed so white that it was almost translucent. When Tina's classes were over and she stepped out, she immediately spotted Dylan staring at a certain direction fixedly. She silently stepped over and was just about to scare him. However, when she reached him, she followed his line of sight and her eyes landed on Sophia. She frowned and tightened her hold on her books. Sophia reached the school entrance first. After waiting for a full half an hour, Tina finally appeared. Her black face made the atmosphere in the entire car feel dense and heavy. Sophia did not care and asked Uncle Smith to let her alight at the street where the provision shop was. She had to go get the tea leaves. The box holding the tea leaves was exceptionally exquisite, so much so that it would not be an exaggeration to call it an antique. Sophia lamented, this box is so beautiful. Using it to store tea leaves is such a waste. Jasper was still dressed in black, and his lips twitched. Little kid, have you heard of buying the case and returning the pearl? Sophia slowly looked up. She felt that this person meant something else with his words. Still, she did not think much of it. After all, how could 100 yuan tea leaves be compared to pearls? The car was still waiting outside, so she could not idle here for long. Hence, she left after simply saying, see you tomorrow. Tina was already annoyed with the waiting. As she saw Sophia board the car again, her face turned even darker. Why do you have so many issues? Dragging and wasting time. Sophia ignored her. The car drove into the Turner family's compound. Just as it stopped, Tina immediately got down and slammed the car door shut. She then entered the house in a huff. Meanwhile, Sophia slowly exited the car with the tea leaves in a laid-back manner. Before she could even enter, she quickly spotted a familiar silhouette seated by the door. The person had a head of white hair and an elegant and cultured look. Daisy. She walked over, confused. Granny, why are you sitting here? Daisy had a bitter expression. Little Sophia, it is truly impossible to buy those tea leaves. Why am I so ignorant? I actually said such resolute words. I no longer have the face to go back in. Chapter 13. Daisy had hustled outside for the whole day. She had a few students in Bin City, but everyone said that there were only 150 grams of Da Hong Pao in the entire Bin City, and they were all with Elder Walker. Daisy felt even more helpless, and hope diminished in her the more she asked around. It was nothing to her to be mocked by Demi, but if Rose were to offend her father-in-law, her life in the Turner family would definitely become much harder. Sophia wanted to speak, but Daisy continued, I didn't agree when your mother said that she wanted to marry your father back then. Is a rich family an easy group to live with? After the marriage, Demi is always dissatisfied with your mother in every way possible. Your mother's position in the household became even worse when the second daughter-in-law of the family hails from a family with a similar status to theirs. Finally finding an opening to speak, Sophia spoke up. Granny, after you were stolen, your grandmother started nitpicking on your mother even more. I persuaded her to give birth to another child in order to have an easier life here, but that fool did not agree no matter what. She said that it would not be fair to you. Sophia was stunned at this. A warm current flowed in her heart. Rose had gone to such great lengths for her. This knowledge made her feel a stronger attachment to both Rose and the term called mother. She is a stubborn fool. She never cares for anything else once she has made up her mind on something. She used to be such a prideful person, and there were so many people chasing her. Yet now, she had relegated herself to such a state. Just looking at her makes my heart ache. Daisy's eyes turned red. Your grandfather has returned home, but your father has gone to the neighboring province for work, so he is definitely unable to return today. There isn't even a single person who can speak up for your mother at home. No, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will not let your mother suffer in any way today. At most, I will just bring my daughter home. Right after saying this, she immediately made her way to the living room. Sophia, Granny, can you listen to me for a short while? She helplessly followed her maternal grandmother, then took out the tea leaves from her back and stuffed it into the latter's hands. Daisy was just about to look at what it was, but old Lady Turner's loud chiding suddenly sounded. Rose, you are the sinner of our Turner family. Sophia frowned. Similarly, Daisy was so hurried that she could not reply. The two quickly made their way to the living room. The servants were all standing in the dining area and sticking their heads out to look at the living room. In the living room, the old patriarch and old Lady Turner were both seated on the sofa. Old Patriarch Turner had a dark look looming over his face while old Lady Turner had a gloating look. Rose stood before both of them. She was so ashamed that she could not even raise her head. Her eyes were red, and tears were dripping down from them. What right do you have to cry? Old Lady Turner continued berating. What else can you do other than cry? Rose, do you know how important this project is to our company? Rose was unable to say anything. She took a deep breath and looked up. Dad, Mom, I am in the wrong this time. I will accept the punishment. At this stage, retorting was useless. She knew that the old patriarch was a prideful one. Last time, he had helped her only because the old lady had gone overboard with her actions and had wounded the Turner family's image. It was not that he took her side. The old lady immediately ordered, "Sure. Then you shall be served with the ancestral house punishment." This made Rose tremble immediately. The old lady continued, "Rose, it's not that I am picking on you. This is such a huge blunder. If we let it pass easily, our Turner family's prestige and authority will be undermined. Old man, are you opposed to this punishment?" The old patriarch frowned, then nodded. Immediately after, Auntie Norman slowly walked over with the prepared ferule. Rose's pupils constricted when she saw the flat and white ruler. Her shoulder trembled. The ruler was made of stainless steel. Just a smack on the body would be agonizing. Gerald had mentioned before that one swing of this ruler could make her frail body swollen for an entire month. Old Lady Turner's eyes glinted brightly. She had lost her face yesterday, so she was going to get it back today. She nodded at Auntie Norman, who immediately raised the ruler and was just about to swing it at Rose's back. "Stop what you're doing." Daisy rushed out and hugged Rose, glaring furiously at old Lady Turner. "What age is it already now that you still employ such ancestral methods? This is called a private torture encampment and is against the law. I will call the police if you dare to hit my daughter." Old Lady Turner turned her eyes upwards and scoffed. "Which high society family doesn't have their own rules? My in-law, this is our Turner family's matters. I shall advise you to move away so you don't get hurt by accident." Daisy was not afraid in the least as she stared at Auntie Norman. "Fine, then. Come hit me. I shall see how your reputation fares when news of the respected Turner family bullying the weak and old get out." Old Lady Turner raised her chin. In a belittling tone, she said, "Fine. Your daughter is a pampered one and cannot accept our Turner family's teachings. Since that's the case, you can just bring her back." Daisy yanked Rose over. "Fine, then. Rose, Sophia, follow me home." However, the latter remained silent. Rose could not bear to be apart from Gerald. Gerald was a conservative man. He did not care about family matters, but he was a good husband. In the past few years, old Lady Turner had, at most, mocked her, but she had never truly hurt her only because of Gerald. One was his biological mother while the other was his wife. It was already a blessing that he could do this. The slap old Lady Turner gave her was the worst thing she had done to her these few years, but the old patriarch had backed her up after that. Gerald did not claim any credit, but she knew that he must have whispered something into the old patriarch's ears. For example, right now, the house's phone and the old patriarch's phone were constantly ringing. It must be because Gerald was unable to rush back in time and, hence, was calling desperately. He had always been silently protecting her in his own way. Now that their daughter was back and he was at an important crossroads of taking over the company from the old patriarch, if she were to return home now, there would definitely be rumors about them getting divorced the next day. That would be detrimental to his reputation. The second son had always been trying to usurp Gerald's position for many years, so she could not give him this chance. As she thought of this, Rose released Daisy's hands. "Mom, I'm not leaving." The latter was so panicked that she wanted to flare up. "Rose, why are you this stubborn?" Rose's attitude was resolute. She moved to say something when she suddenly spotted the item in her mother's hands. She paused in shock. Such an exquisite small box was used to store tea leaves. She dazedly took the box and opened it. When she saw the tea leaves inside, she was totally stunned. Da Hong Pao. The situation instantly took a 180-degree turn. Everyone was in a dazed shock. Old Lady Turner originally thought that she had victory in her hand, but did she truly find the tea leaves? Impossible. She shrieked, "These tea leaves must be fake. Are you trying to pull off a trick using fake ones?" Old Master Turner walked up and received the tea leaves from Rose in a trance. He carefully examined them and made an unbelievable conclusion. It's real. Moreover, just by looking at the box, it could be seen that this was of higher quality than the one he bought. He looked at Daisy in surprise, then asked agitatedly, "Where did you buy it from?" Chapter 14. Daisy did not understand what had just happened. She stood rooted on the spot and only returned to her senses after some time. Suddenly, she turned to look at Sophia. Little Sophia is only a high schooler and does not have much money with her, so it is impossible for her to have bought such expensive tea leaves. So these are actually bought by Gerald. All these years, whenever there were important events in the family, Gerald would always buy expensive gifts in advance for her to give as gifts. He did so to uphold Rose's dignity and elevate the Morris family's status. That happened too many times in the past, so Daisy naturally thought that Gerald had bought it and got Sophia to pass it to her in order to back Rose up. She quickly returned to her senses and straightened her back. Looking at old Lady Turner, she asked, is this tea all right?" "It's all right." Old Master Turner nodded profusely. He held the 3 liang of tea and walked to the side jubilantly. He ought to bring this when visiting the Walker family this weekend. It was even more upscale and he would not need to change the box at all. Old Lady Turner still could not believe it. "How is it possible that you managed to buy it?" Daisy lowered her eyes as she said in an elegant yet unfathomable way, "Don't look down on university professors. There's a saying that goes, having students all over the world. Oh, I forgot that you might not be able to understand it. Do you need me to explain?" She was actually hinting that their Morris family had connections and they should not look down on Rose. Old Lady Turner's face turned crimson red and she was trembling from anger. Daisy had the talent of speaking in a mild and refined manner, but her words could anger others to death. The old lady looked indignantly at Rose and scolded, "Consider yourself lucky this time. Be more careful when you're working at home next time." Rose kept silent and nodded her head. Seeing that everything had been settled, Sophia felt relieved. Thinking about the mathematics assignment that old Potter gave her, she picked up her school bag and headed upstairs while walking past everyone. Just as she was on the stairs, she paused before turning to look at old Lady Turner and said casually, "Don't place this tea in the tea cabinet anymore in case anyone spills it again." One single sentence was enough to pinpoint where the problem was. Ignoring the fact that old Master Turner was now deep in thought and old lady Turner was suddenly anxious, she headed upstairs straight away. After entering her room, she closed the door and fished out the papers from her school bag. Old Potter said that she should avoid using knowledge outside of the syllabus to answer the questions and that the only method to do so was to use the tactic of a sea of questions. Hence, she needed to keep doing the questions repeatedly. Once she got into her studying mode, she blocked out the commotion and the crying that were coming from downstairs. It was only during dinner time when Rose came up to call her that Sophia turned around and replied dazedly, "Huh." Rose touched her head and said helplessly, "It's time for dinner." However, she could not stop and only stood up after calculating the answer. "Oh." When they were heading downstairs, Rose said on purpose, "Old Master wants to fire Auntie Norman, but old lady did her best to keep her and 2 years' worth of her salary will be deducted. She can no longer help out in the house but can only work in the back garden." Sophia nodded. It was odd to place the tea leaves that were meant as a gift in the tea cabinet where the family gets their daily tea leaves from. It must be the old lady's tactics. After Auntie Norman had been punished, the helpers at home would no longer dare to look down on Rose. While they were having dinner, Sophia could sense the evil stares from old lady Turner and Tina without even looking at them. However, she had always been slow to react, so she did not feel anything much. She quickly finished eating and went back up to do her questions again. Daisy wanted to ask her something but did not have the opportunity to do so. The next morning, before Daisy went home, she asked her daughter, "Did you ask Gerald where he bought the tea from?" Rose shook her head. "I didn't mention this over the phone yesterday. I'll ask him when he comes back today." "All right." By the time Sophia woke up, Daisy had already left. Since she was going to her maternal grandmother's home during the weekend, she did not care much and alighted at the provision store as usual. Just as she was about to enter the store, she saw a girl in uniform with pink hair on the street not far away. Her hands were in her pockets as she kicked the stones on the path while she walked. "Hannah." Perhaps the girl sensed her stare. Hannah looked up. Upon seeing Sophia, her eyes lit up and she waved. She wanted to run to her, but she seemed to have seen something suddenly and hurriedly hid in an alley beside the street. Sophia turned her head around while feeling perplexed and saw old Potter. He was riding a tattered bicycle. As he stepped on the pedal, the bicycle would give out a screeching sound and wobble as though it was going to break the next second. The weather was warm and he had beads of perspiration on his head. He was looking for something in the vicinity, and when he saw Sophia, he stretched out his leg and stopped. "Sophia, have you seen Hannah?" Sophia instinctively looked at the alley and remained silent. Old Potter seemed to have understood something. He removed a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the sweat on his forehead before saying, She skipped class the whole day yesterday and didn't even go home the whole night. I'm worried about her safety, and if you happen to see her, just tell her to come back even if she doesn't want to dye her hair back and stop hiding." Sophia replied, "Oh." Old Potter's voice was so loud, so he must have said it intentionally for Hannah to hear. Hee hee. Old Potter chuckled and looked at the provision store before saying, "Since it's still early, go buy your stuff and just don't be late." After saying that, he cycled away. Hannah appeared from the alley only after old Potter had vanished. Walking up to Sophia, she looked at old Potter's back. Old Potter's bicycle has been around for 7-8 years, and I've seen him wearing those clothes since I was a freshman. Our school's salary isn't low, but he is just being stingy. However, his family is quite sad. His wife broke her leg and can't work, so old Potter is the sole breadwinner. Her voice got softer as she spoke. To a family like hers, 500 yuan was merely a meal's worth, but for old Potter. Hannah remained silent for a moment and seemed to be in a dilemma. Sophia asked, "You really like pink?" "Not really." Hannah wanted to say something, but when she saw Sophia's clean face, she swallowed her words. "Forget it, you won't get it even if I say it." She then turned around to leave. "Where are you going?" Sophia asked. The girl waved with her back facing Sophia. She kept quiet. Only her pink hair was blowing in the wind. Sophia waited until the girl was farther away before going into the provision store. Breakfast had been prepared, and after entering, she sat down at the dining table naturally. She realized only after finishing breakfast with Jasper and Canine Teeth that it had been merely 3 days and she was already used to it. However, Jasper did not raise any other request. Could it be that he had cast a spell on her to make her buy something every day? Since I bought tea yesterday, what should I buy today? Sophia gave it some thought but realized that she was not lacking anything. After all, Rose had been attentive and prepared everything for her. She decided not to stop being indecisive. Placing a 100 yuan bill on the table, she casually said, "I'll buy a box of balloons." Jasper was preparing to get up but froze when he heard that. Chapter 15. Hua. Chris spit out the milk he had just drunk. "What did you say you wanted to buy?" Confused, Sophia looked at Canine Teeth and did not understand why he overreacted. Yet she still explained it seriously. "It's the balloons that were on the shelves when I came by that first day." "What balloons?" Those were clearly. Canine Teeth had wanted to speak, but he choked on himself and began to cough violently. Sophia looked at Jasper perplexedly. The man placed his hands in his pocket and walked to the counter. He sat down lazily on the chair before asking, "You're buying that to play on your own?" She paused for 2 seconds before replying, "Yes." Jasper leaned back as he hid himself in the dark corner of the store. Then, he said with a hint of laughter in his voice, "How boring it is to play alone." Sophia gave it a thought. "That's true, too. Then I'll buy them and leave them here so we can play together next time." Hua. Just as Chris had had a mouthful of water to suppress his cough, he spat it out again. She noticed that something was off, and just as she was about to ask Canine Teeth why he was being so agitated, the sound of fingers knocking against the table was heard. Jasper's mesmerizing voice rang. "Little kid, you're gonna be late soon." Late. She anxiously looked at the clock in the store and saw that there were 5 more minutes before the bell was to ring. She picked up her school bag in a hurry and ran outside. "I'll go for now." Looking at the girl's back, Chris slowly turned to look at his boss. The man was calmly hidden in the corner and reading his book. Chris walked over and leaned on the counter. "Boss, when are you going back?" He replied, "We'll talk about it another time." Chris nodded. "Right, when I got the tea from old Walker yesterday, he obliquely tried to know your whereabouts. He sent a message today to ask what the tea was for." How should I reply? Jasper kept quiet for quite some time. Chris thought the man's silence meant that he did not need to reply. However, Jasper suddenly chuckled. "Betrothal present." Huh. Chris was stunned, but he quickly became excited. If old Walker were to know that boss, who had been single for 25 years, has finally gotten a fiancé in Bin City, his jaw would probably drop, wouldn't it? After replying to the message, he walked to the dining table and picked up the 100 yuan bill that Sophia left behind. Just as he was about to put it in his pocket, he heard Jasper knocking his fingers against the table again. He froze as he turned around and saw Jasper staring straight at him. Chris gave the 100 yuan bill to the man out of instinct. The man opened his wallet and placed the bill alongside the 200 yuan bills from yesterday before reading his book composedly again. Chris. After 2 periods of physical education where Sophia did her exercises, she came back. Seizing every minute and second, she kept doing the Olympiad questions that old Potter had assigned for her to do. At this moment, the sound of deep breaths being drawn was suddenly heard in the class and a complete silence ensued. Sophia did not take notice until someone pulled the chair in front of her and hit her table as the person sat down. She slowly lifted her eyes to take a look. What she saw was thick, black hair. Hannah. Sophia blinked and felt unknown joy tingling in her heart. Nonetheless, the usual chatterbox looked depressed as she lay on the table half-heartedly. The people beside her quickly pulled their tables away as though Hannah, who had dyed her hair black, was carrying a virus in her. The 4th class today was mathematics class. Old Potter entered the classroom, and when he saw Hannah, his face lit up. Student Hannah's performance is not bad. It was rare that Hannah did not talk back to him. She dipped her head as though something was weighing on her mind. Sophia noticed that ever since Hannah had entered the classroom, there had been a looming atmosphere. There were several students discussing softly and gesticulating at Hannah, but nobody dared to speak a word to her. Back then, when Hannah still had pink hair, she loved to bicker with their classmates, but she also had great relations with them. When the fourth period ended, everyone started to head out and was preparing to eat at the canteen. After completing the last question, Sophia saw that Hannah was still lying on the table. She stood up and asked, "Do you want to eat?" There were some students who had not left the classroom yet. They all turned to look at Sophia with shock in their eyes. Hannah did not expect Sophia to dare to speak to her. Feeling baffled, she lifted her head. She suddenly remembered that Sophia was a transfer student, and so, having no idea about her matters, she dared to be so reckless. Hannah smiled bitterly. "I'm not hungry, you go ahead." Being in such a situation herself, she had better not implicate a good student like her. Sophia replied, "Oh." Since she was unemotional, she did not insist and went to the canteen on her own. After returning from lunch, she saw Hannah, who said she was not hungry, lying there while eating biscuits and drinking milk. It was as if she dared not step out of the classroom. Sophia. More periods had passed in the afternoon and only self-revision classes were left. Sophia packed up her items and was prepared to head to Olympiad classes when someone shouted, "Hannah, someone is looking for you." Hannah shivered, but she went out eventually. By the time she was back, her face was as pale as a sheet and she appeared deeply terrified. Sophia wanted to ask her what was wrong and if she needed help. However, Hannah did not give her the chance to ask and simply lay on her desk and appeared to be sleeping. Sophia shut her mouth and carried the books as she headed for class. The 2 periods of classes ended in a blink of an eye. School was over, and Sophia felt that she barely finished any questions. Just as she was packing her papers helplessly, it turned dark right before her eyes. Dylan stood in front of her and there was a look of hesitation in his eyes. He lowered his voice and warned, "Stay away from Hannah." Sophia looked perplexedly at him. Dylan appeared awkward. He then lifted his head slightly and said arrogantly, "She isn't a good girl and has created huge trouble after dyeing her hair back. Anyways, just don't get too close to her." After saying that, he saw the girl looking at him with huge, watery eyes. For some unknown reason, he was flustered and left the classroom in a hurry. Tina was already outside of the classroom. Upon seeing that, she frowned and asked, "Dylan, what did you say to her?" Dylan had a slight guilty conscience and his mind was in a mess as well. "Nothing much." The girl was stunned as she did not expect the boy to answer her so perfunctorily. Balling up her fists, she shot Sophia a menacing stare. Sophia did not understand why Dylan would warn her. Nonetheless, she did not think much of it and returned to her classroom to find that Hannah was no longer in her seat. Only the students on duty were left cleaning and they were creating a dust storm in the classroom. She picked up her school bag and left the school gate. Just as she was going to get in the car, she saw a silhouette flash across and go into the alley nearby. "It's Hannah." Sophia frowned. She had always been unemotional and would not meddle into others' affairs. However, at the thought that it was Hannah, she did not hesitate and went there straight. She wanted to see what on earth had happened. Chapter 16. Sophia got Uncle Smith to head back first and she proceeded to walk there. Crossing the road, she walked into the alley and the noisy street cry seemed to be blocked. There was quietness amid the noisy surroundings. She continued to walk for another 200 meters before hearing a commotion coming from the corner. She turned at the corner and saw about 7 or 8 men. At that moment, Sophia saw red. Those 7 people were wearing different uniforms and were students from different schools. The girls had their hair dyed pink while the boys had theirs dyed red with a lot of hairspray. The boys' hair was standing and they all looked like a group of flames. This group of students was currently keeping Hannah in a circle. Flame number 1 pushed her. "Who allowed you to dye your hair black?" Flame number 2, "Hannah, are you planning to leave us?" Flame number 3, "Have you forgotten how you'll end up if you leave the society?" Being surrounded in the middle, Hannah was shivering, and her face, which was full of thick makeup, was marked with fear. She looked to one side and pleaded, "Brother Jackson, I beg you to let me off." It was then that Sophia realized that there was flame number 8. That Brother Jackson was leaning against a gray wall, and he too had exaggerated red hair. Still, he was quite good looking. He lowered his eyes and leaned on the wall as he played games on his phone, and the words, "Don't annoy me," were clearly written on his face. Flame number 1 said again, "Hannah, have you forgotten the oath you swore when you first joined the society? I'll give you one chance. Dye your hair back tomorrow or you'll be betraying our Roaring Flame Society, and you should know the consequences." Sophia was at a complete loss as she stood at the entrance to the alley. After listening on, she finally understood what had happened. Hannah's pink hair must be that Roaring Flame Society's signature, and the leader of the society must be Brother Jackson. Everyone hid from Hannah at school because they were afraid of Brother Jackson. Even Dylan dared not bully him, and this showed that this boy was locked and loaded or a scion from an influential family. There was also a third possibility that he was both. Although Hannah was horror-stricken, she stuttered and asked, "What on earth must I do in order to not dye my hair back?" Flame number 2, "Not dye. What international joke are you cracking?" Flame number 4, "Hannah, who helped you when you were crying from being bullied back then? Now you've become so ungrateful, how ignorant to not know chalk from cheese." Flame number 1, "Since you don't want to dye your hair red, fine. We've thought of a great solution, and that is to shave your hair. Won't that work?" After saying that, he whipped out a pair of scissors. Hannah was so frightened that she squatted and covered her hair. "Don't." However, her arms were locked and she could not struggle. "Hannah, you brought this upon yourself." Flame number 1 lifted her locks and cut them mercilessly. At this moment, "Stop it." A cold and aloof voice rang and they stopped what they were doing to look at the alley. Sophia was standing there as she looked at them with watery eyes. She scanned everyone before resting her eyes on Hannah. Looking at her, Hannah was stunned, but she quickly shouted, "Sophia, leave me alone and leave at once." Sophia walked toward Hannah. Although she looked obedient and weak, the flame subconsciously moved aside for her to walk past them. Blocking Hannah, she turned to look at flame number 1. The silence remained for a few seconds, and just as flame number 1 was doubting if he was wearing his uniform incorrectly, the girl finally spoke. "What must be done for you to let her off?" Flame number 1 replied subconsciously, "Only one way, and that is to defeat Brother Jackson. You'll become the leader of the Roaring Flame Society and you'll have the last say on the rules." Sophia thought about it for a while before looking surprised. "Fighting." Seeing her like this, the rest finally found the situation normal again. Flame number 1 became rampant again. "Now you're scared. Let me tell you, don't poke your nose into others' business. Hurry up and scram, don't waste our time." Hannah hurriedly pushed her too. "We're not close, hurry up and leave." Sophia took off her school bag and passed it to Hannah before looking at Brother Jackson and saying lightly, "Let's fight, then." Jackson did not reply right away. He waited until he was done with his game before throwing his phone irritatedly at someone. "Gotcha." He warmed up his wrist and neck while his joints cracked. "Let's end it fast." However, when he lifted his head, he was shocked to see Sophia. "Isn't this the girl who grabbed me and confessed to me the other day? She looks skinny and weak. Furthermore, her obedient look makes it evident that she is different from us. How can she fight?" Sophia did not recognize him. Standing there, she and Jackson looked at each other in the eye. Jackson broke the silence. "You go first." Sophia paused for a moment before asking, "Why don't you wait for me for 30 minutes? Jackson was confused. It was the first time the opponent had asked him to wait while fighting. He was baffled. "Why?" Sophia appeared calm, but deep down, she replied abashedly, "I don't know how to fight. Let me go and learn first." Jackson Walker was perplexed and he subconsciously nodded. Not caring about the complicated look on the others' faces, Sophia proceeded to walk to the provision store while others were reeling from the shock. Jasper was still sitting at the counter and reading his book. As he saw her walking into his store, his dark brown eyes glowed. "What's the matter?" Sophia looked at him. The man had well-chiseled features and a bandit aura. He clearly mixed around in the underworld, and even though he appeared skinny and weak with his fair skin, he probably knew simple fighting moves. She slowly said, "Can you teach me how to fight?" Sitting on the stool, Chris was playing with his phone. He looked dazedly at Sophia. She was rephrasing her words and thinking about how to explain. Sitting in the shadow, Jasper did not question anything and simply stretched his long leg to kick Chris. Teach her the complete set of army boxing. Yes, Chris had replied instinctively and only reacted when he stood up. Would she be able to get it in such a short period of time? However, obeying orders was his duty. He began to teach. Army boxing is made up of several key basic skills, which are kicking, hitting, slamming, seizing, twisting, and other wrestling components. Breaking them down, the actions are like this. He demonstrated them in an empty space in the store as he stood in front of her. First, attack. Sophia nodded. Equipped with an extraordinarily retentive memory, she remembered the key points. Lifting her fists, her right leg took a step back as she bent her back and prepared to attack. Suddenly, a warm palm rested on her waist, and as Sophia froze, Jasper's deep and charming voice was heard beside her ear. You need to tighten your waist strongly. Only then did she realize that Jasper had gotten to her side without her noticing. His hand touched her and moved away, and she did not overthink things. She relaxed and focused on learning attentively. Jasper took a step back and his eyes rested on his hand. He did not expect the girl's waist to be so skinny and soft beneath the wide uniform. It was as though he could wrap around it with just one hand. Chapter 17. When Sophia was ready, Chris stretched out one hand and he stressed. You gotta use strength and must be quick. But you're a girl and your reaction is slow. Before he could finish his sentence, she gave him a kick. Bang. Chris felt a powerful force coming at him and he backtracked 5-6 steps before steadying himself. By the time he regained his senses, he was confused. How can a girl be so strong? Sophia ended off in a suave pose as she turned to look at him. Do I need more strength? She grew up in the orphanage since she was young and had to do heavy manual labor such as washing sheets and blankets. Hence, she was much stronger than the average person. Unfortunately, she had not learned martial arts in the past and did not know how to fight. Chris hurriedly signaled. It's enough. He moved his numb hand and said, do this, hit, action. Relax and you don't have to use too much strength. After learning it 2 times, Sophia had gotten hold of the boxing's key elements. Taking a look at the time, she hurried to where Hannah was. The sky was getting dark and the lamps in the alley were lit. By the time Sophia got there, she saw the 7 flames and Hannah squatting dazedly beneath the faint light from the lamp. Meanwhile, Jackson was still leaning against the wall and playing with his phone. They looked quite hilarious like this. Flame number 1 was holding a grass stalk, which he got from somewhere, in his mouth, and he said, shit. Could she have lied to us and won't be coming back? Hannah anxiously replied, it's not her business to begin with. Brother Jackson, you can choose to just beat me up or let me go. Jackson sneered and kept quiet. Then, his ears moved slightly and he heard light footsteps coming. Tilting his head slightly, he saw the girl walking toward them, and she was expressionless just as before. She appeared apathetic and her eyes seemed naturally dazed as she said slowly, I've finished learning. Feeling anxious, Hannah said, Sophia, knock it off. Brother Jackson is really good at fighting and nobody in this area could beat him. Jackson raised his brow. Usually, he did not mind anyone and would beat both men and women. However, for some unknown reason, when he saw a good girl like her, he could not bring himself to do it. Maybe he should go easy on her and not let her be defeated too badly. Thinking of which, he said, let's start. Just as he said it, the quiet girl moved. By the time she completed the series of moves, kick, hit, slam, seize, and twist, Jackson was lying flat on the ground while she got him into an arm lock. Everyone present was taken aback and stared blankly at them. Too fast. It was so fast that before they could even cheer, it had ended. Jackson tried to forcefully break free of the girl's control. Even though she seemed weak, he could not break free. He shouted, I wasn't well prepared just now. Let's do it again. Oh. Sophia nodded and let go of his arm. She stretched her fist and her right foot took a step back. Looking serious, her eyes seemed blank and her position did not change at all. Jackson warmed up, and when he was ready, he shouted, start. 20 seconds later, Jackson, who was lying flat on the ground, began to doubt his life. He had clearly seen through her tactics, but he just could not catch up with her speed. Isn't she slow to react? With his face burning red, he balled his fists and said indignantly, I admit defeat. Sophia let go of him. Jackson stood up and patted the dust off himself as his face was filled with grievance and stubbornness. Just wait and see, I'll defeat you one day. When that day comes, you'll be my subordinate and will dye your hair red. Sophia. Oh, he felt as though his powerful fist landed on cotton and could not muster any strength. After he took in a deep breath, his hands waved and the rest stood up straight. Next, all of them bowed at Sophia and shouted in harmony, Sister Sophia. Sophia. Flame number 1 shot a glance at Jackson, and, after obtaining his approval, he asked, Sister Sophia, do we need to dye our hair black? Looking at their hair, she replied, anything. Everyone had different preferences and she would not force them. Taking her school bag from Hannah's hands, she turned around and left. Jackson tried to resist it but could not, so he asked, Where are you going? Sophia paused. Going home to do questions. After the students had left, Jasper and Chris appeared from the darkness. Chris sighed. Boss, sister-in-law's skills are not bad, truly a good seedling. Upon finishing his words, he stole a stealthy glance at Jasper, only to see his face all tensed as he looked ahead with shimmers in his eyes. Chris could not help but ask, Boss, what secrets do you think that little sister-in-law is hiding such that you have to stay here personally? The man shot him a glance and the latter shut his mouth immediately, pretending as though he did not say the last sentence. Walker family. Elder Walker, who was in his 60s, was anxiously pacing up and down in his room. When his secretary entered, he asked in haste, Have you found it? The secretary lowered his head respectfully. I can't find any hint of General Brown's whereabouts. Elder Walker frowned as he sat on the sofa and smoked a cigar. As he exhaled the smoke, he said, General Brown's movements have always been stealthy and odd. It would be weird if we could find his whereabouts. Anyways, since he is in Bin City, let's be more careful. Tell the rest that this weekend's gathering is cancelled and we won't be receiving any gifts. If General Brown finds out about it, we'll be in for some scoldings. The secretary nodded. Yes. Elder Walker gave it a thought for some time. Start with that tea and investigate where the tea went. General Brown's fiancée is in Bin City. Don't offend her accidentally. Yes. Turner family. Gerald, who'd gone on a business trip, was finally back. He first greeted Old Lady Turner and quickly pulled Rose into the bedroom as he asked nervously, Are you hurt? She shook her head and narrated what happened yesterday. Upon hearing that the old lady wanted to exercise the family's punishment, his face turned terrifyingly dark. She then sighed. Mom didn't go too overboard in the past, so what's wrong recently? I feel that she's against me. They had been married for nearly 20 years. Although the old lady was not fond of Rose, she had never hit her and embarrassed her in front of outsiders. Gerald's eyes darkened and he sighed. That's because I'm taking over the company. Rose was not a silly and naive girl. She held herself aloof from the world in the past because she lost her daughter and all her hopes were dashed to pieces. Now that Gerald had said it, she instantly understood what he meant. The old lady wants the second child to inherit the business. Her eyes constricted as she reeled from the shock. If I had really left yesterday, your reputation would have then crumbled. Mom is going too overboard. She is biased without any limits. Seeing that her husband was not looking too good, she knew he must be feeling worse. She hurriedly comforted him. Never mind, you still have me and little Sophia. Gerald nodded and hugged his wife. After leaning in each other's embrace for a while, she asked curiously, That tea, where did you get it from? He was taken aback upon hearing that. Didn't Mom buy it? Chapter 18. Just as he spoke, the servant knocked on the door. Sir, old master wants you to come downstairs. Although Rose did not hear Gerald, she dared not ask again and they left in haste. Downstairs, Darren was sitting on the sofa with a stern expression. There was a looming atmosphere in the room and the servants were treading on thin ice. Gerald tidied his collar button and asked solemnly, Dad, what's wrong? Old master frowned. Quickly think, what have we done wrong to offend the Walker family? Gerald paused. Why do you say that? Old Master replied, Elder Walker's secretary called earlier to inform us not to go for this weekend's gathering. Tina, who had left school, overheard their conversation and her eyes lit up instantly. Grandpa, Big Uncle, I know, it's definitely because of Sophia. The moment Tina said that, Rose asked anxiously, what's wrong with little Sophia? Tina pouted. Our class, Hannah offended Jackson and was stopped after school. Sophia wanted to show off and insisted on helping. Grandpa, Jackson is Elder Walker's very life and our family needs to rely on the Walker family. Wasn't she giving our family trouble by doing that? Elder Walker's only son passed away in an accident, leaving behind his only grandchild, Jackson. Since Elder Walker always covered up his grandson's mistakes, Jackson was able to be a tyrant in the international school. Old Lady Turner hit the table instantaneously. Ridiculous. I've long said before that a wild child like this shouldn't be brought home. Only a few days have passed and she has already created such huge trouble. Rose wobbled as she covered her chest. Jackson was a well-known devil incarnate and could fight really well. He once broke a girl's rib. My little Sophia is skinny and weak. A single punch from Jackson could be enough to take half her life away. Just as they were feeling anxious, Gerald stared straight at Tina. Where are they? How long ago did it happen? The girl replied, in the alley beside the school. It should have been around an hour ago. Her uncle flew into a rage. Why didn't you call home when your sister is in trouble? The girl's eyes flickered. She wished Jackson could beat Sophia up worse, and the best case would be if she became paralyzed. Why would she still call for help? Before Tina could find an excuse, Old Lady Turner scolded, why should she call? A lass like Sophia who overestimated her true abilities should be taught a lesson. Mom, Gerald interrupted her. There was no time to pursue the matter. The pressing issue of the moment was to ensure little Sophia's safety. Get the car ready. Rose's voice was trembling. Nothing could happen to her little Sophia. Just as she and Gerald were heading out anxiously and the rest were waiting for them to be the butt of the joke, a skinny silhouette entered through the door suddenly. Sophia walked all the way home while carrying her school bag. When she set foot in the house, she saw her parents heading out worriedly, so she gave way to them obediently. Seeing Rose staring at her and not moving for quite some time, she blinked her eyes in confusion and asked, Mom, are you going out? There was pin-drop silence in the living room and all eyes were on her. After 5 seconds had passed, Rose observed her from head to toe. Her huge uniform covered her skinny body well and there seemed to be no injury except a patch of dust on her pants. She got anxious. Little Sophia, are you all right? Sophia sighed. Not all right. Rose's eyes reddened instantly as she grabbed her hands and asked, what's wrong? Her daughter was baffled and did not understand why she was so agitated. She then replied slowly, Mr. Potter gave me 5 papers to do today and I don't think I can finish them. She intended to come home straight after school to do the questions. However, Hannah's matter got her delayed for an hour and a half. She probably had to burn the midnight oil. Rose, who was anxious about looking at where she had hurt herself. She asked in shock, just this? Sophia nodded. She gripped her hand, which was carrying the school bag, and decided to walk past her mother and head upstairs. Mom, I'll go study first. She'd taken only 2 steps when she heard Old Lady Turner's voice. Don't use studies as an excuse. Sophia, since you're fine, then go to the Walker family and apologize at once. A question mark appeared in her mind. Why apologize? Just as she was feeling perplexed, Gerald said, Mom, we aren't sure of what has happened yet. Moreover, it's a matter between the children. There's no need to raise it to a higher plane of principle. It's not so serious. After saying that, he turned to Rose. Bring little Sophia upstairs. She nodded. Just as Sophia was heading upstairs, the old lady berated, Eldest son, you can't protect your child like this. If you don't let her apologize, what should we do with the Walker family's matter? Gerald said with determination, I found Sophia and took her back not for her to be bullied. I'll settle this myself. You'll settle it. Old Lady Turner raised her voice and immediately sneered. Sure, if you can't settle the Walker family, the shareholders won't approve of you as the chairman. I'll see what you will do then. Even when she got into her room, Sophia still did not understand what was going on. Walker family. I do not know anyone with the surname Walker. Looking at Rose, she asked, "What's wrong?" Her mother merely comforted her gently. "Don't be scared, with Dad and Mom around, we won't let you suffer." Sophia, whose dictionary did not have the word scared. Right at this moment, the door was opened and Gerald entered. Sophia felt a little uneasy. Ever since she came home, he had been on a business trip, so she rarely interacted with her father. He smiled warmly at her. "Little Sophia, do your assignment." He reached out and gently patted her head as he said, "Don't worry, you have me." Sophia, oh. Dipping her head, she stared at the questions blankly. Although she had no idea what happened, this man's thick shoulders seemed to have really brought her a sense of security. Though she was usually expressionless, the corners of her lips turned up and her belongingness to this family rose. She shook her head and threw those mixed thoughts behind her mind as she focused on doing her questions. Even when Gerald and Rose had left the room, she remained focused. Back in their bedroom, Rose's face took on a ghastly expression. What should we do? Now that little Sophia had been beaten up, and given Jackson's style, this matter was considered to have passed. Since little Sophia was alright now, it meant that Jackson would not take things lying down. Gerald sighed. "I'll make a trip to the Walker family tomorrow." As a man, he had to yield when he needed to for the sake of his wife and child. Rose hated herself for being useless, and the thought of wanting to become stronger grew. She nodded her head helplessly. "Then bring those leaves as well. Elder Walker's favorite is tea, and he probably won't pursue the matter on account of the tea, right?" Gerald did not harbor any hope but still responded, "Sure." Chapter 19. Sophia did the questions until late at night, and, as a result, she woke up slightly late the next day. Rose packed her breakfast for her to eat on her way. Seeing her yawn, she said heart-achingly, "Little Sophia, even if you're participating in the Olympiad, you shouldn't give yourself too much pressure. Health is the most important thing." Sophia nodded. Tina, who had just eaten, heard this and mocked, "If you don't have a diamond cutter, don't try to mend porcelain wares. Some people merely got first in one exam and think that they can conquer Olympiads as well. I heard that someone was last during yesterday's mock exam." Sophia ignored her and left with her breakfast. Old Potter said that she made great improvements yesterday, and as long as she avoided using certain knowledge, there wouldn't be much problem. Of course, this meant that she needed to complete more questions. Tina followed behind her and tried to make references obliquely. "Could it be that your motive doesn't lie in the math Olympiad but in something else?" Sophia turned a deaf ear to it and got in the car. Tina still wanted to speak, but she saw the girl leaning on the car window with her eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Her long lashes were curled upwards, her skin was fair, and her red lips were moist. Tina had a strong urge to destroy such beauty. The car stopped in front of the provision store as usual and Sophia seemed to have slept enough. Just as she took her bag and was getting off, her cousin, who had resisted throughout the journey, mocked her again. "The Math Star competition will be held in a few days' time, and if you can't get a good ranking, Old Potter will kick you out of the Olympiad class. Let me warn you, don't dream about things that don't belong to you." Sophia paused as she alighted and sighed helplessly. "This housefly is so annoying." She slowly turned her head to look at Tina and paused. "I remember that you're joining the physics competition." There was a grip on Tina's heart as she became defensive. "What are you trying to say?" Sophia retracted her gaze and became apathetic again. "Nothing much." She adjusted her fallen shoulder strap and walked toward the provision store, leaving Tina confused and shocked in the car. As she entered the store, Jasper was already sitting beside the dining table. The dining table was somewhat small and the stools were like the chair of the international school students. Sitting on it, Jasper had nowhere to stretch his long legs. He could only rest them on the table legs, and his sharp brows appeared lazy. When Sophia sat down, he picked up a bun, and that was when Canine Teeth dared to eat. The three remained silent, and very soon, they finished their breakfast. As Chris cleaned the table, he asked Sophia, "Hey, how did the fighting yesterday feel?" Sophia looked at him for 2 seconds and answered, "Quite interesting." Chris. She then said slowly, I can fight more often next time. Chris. Seeing Sophia looking at him, Chris swung his slightly numb hands and swallowed his saliva. Quickly, he answered. I still have things on and have no time to train with you. She felt somewhat disappointed. Oh, she then shot a glance at Jasper. The man leaned backward and raised his brow. He thought the little kid would invite him to train with her, but her eyes lingered on him for merely 4 or 5 seconds before she looked away. Jasper was taken aback. What does she mean? Sophia had already made her comment internally about him. Too skinny and merely has a nice appearance. It's better to fight it out with canine teeth. She stood up and was preparing to go to school, but all of a sudden, she paused and said to Jasper, it's the weekend tomorrow and I need to go to my grandpa's house. What should I do? She could not possibly come to the provision store and meet him after coming back from her grandfather's house. If I do not meet him, will my heart hurt? While she was deep in thought, the man chuckled in his charismatic voice. He slowly sat upright. Little kid, do you have some kind of misunderstanding about being in love? Baffled, she looked at him. Jasper placed his hands on the dining table and his fingers crossed as he leaned forward. If it's inconvenient, we don't have to meet every day. If you're feeling unwell, you can think of me, and if it still doesn't work, you can call me. Sophia's eyes glowed. Does this mean that I don't have to come here every day? At the thought of it. Of course, since you pass by here every day on the way to school, if you pretend not to see me, that's another issue. Sophia's eyes, which had just lit up, dimmed again. Oh. Giving it a thought, she fished out her phone, which Gerald had given her, from her bag. What's your phone number? After recording his phone number, she headed out. I'm going to school. Jasper. Logically speaking, after getting my number, shouldn't she call me so that I can add her number too? Why does my little kid not play according to logic? After entering the school, she saw that people were giving her weird looks and hiding far away from her. She did not mind, but when she entered the classroom, the class became silent. Everyone turned to look at her. She continued to walk, and when she sat down, she heard others discussing. I heard Sophia offended Brother Jackson for Hannah's sake. She's done. She has harmed the Turner family terribly. Sophia placed her school bag down while feeling perplexed as to what had happened. Right at this moment, Hannah entered the classroom with a face full of makeup. Her steps were light as she placed her hands in her pocket and chewed gum. Approaching Sophia, she addressed her with admiration and happiness, Sister Sophia. Sophia looked up at her. Hannah was unlike her dispirited and terrified self yesterday. Leaning on her table, she gave it a thought and said, Sister Sophia, actually, Brother Jackson is not bad. He isn't as unreasonable as what outsiders make of him. Oh, Hannah knew Sophia's personality well and did not mind her aloofness. She continued, Sister Sophia, when I saw your army boxing yesterday, I began questioning whether what the instructor taught us is fake during military training. How did you fight that way? Sophia thought about what Canine Teeth had said and replied seriously, by being swift, resolute, and accurate. Hannah laughed instantly and acted out. I got it. Only the fastest martial arts in the world can't be beaten up. And strength. Sophia silently added on. Afterward, she stopped listening to her and focused on doing her Olympiad questions. Time always passes quickly while studying, and before she knew it, 2 afternoon classes had passed. Just as Sophia was about to go for Olympiad class, the students in the classroom drew back their breaths. She lifted her head while feeling lost and saw a group of flashing, rampant redness. That Brother Jackson from last night was standing there and there was a look of impatience on his face. He was looking inside as though he was looking for someone. Flame number 1 was the first to spot Sophia, and he pointed at her and shouted, Brother Jackson, there. Instantly, Brother Jackson, along with flame number 1, 2, 3, and 4 dashed into the room while 5, 6, and 7 stayed at the entrance. They walked on the path and exuded a strong aura. Brother Jackson's fierce look caused the students on both sides of the path to turn as pale as a sheet. They subconsciously moved aside and gave way. As she sat in the first row, Tina's eyes lit up when she saw this. He's here. He's here. She knew that Jackson would definitely not let her off easily, and there he came. However, to her surprise. Chapter 20. Just as Tina was waiting to see a joke, Jackson brought his subordinates reluctantly and they shouted in harmony, "Sister Sophia." Sister Sophia. The whole classroom fell into pin-drop silence and nobody dared to breathe. Their gazes landed on Jackson and eventually fell on Sophia, who was sitting there quietly. The girl sat there obediently and looked up at Jackson for 2 seconds before replying, "Oh." Jackson lifted his chin slightly and stared at flame number 1. The latter immediately asked, "Sister Sophia, we've finished the 6th period. Are there any arrangements next? Where are we going to play?" Sophia had already packed her books as she stood up. She headed outside before replying casually, "Math Olympiad class." Jackson. Flame number 1. Our Roaring Flame Society's girl boss is going to participate in the Math Olympiad competition. The group of flames moved aside, and when Sophia passed by them, they followed behind her orderly. Jackson asked casually, "Class is so boring. Can you understand Math Olympiad classes?" Manageable. Jackson thought he understood what she meant in a matter of seconds and continued to lift his chin. Manageable means unmanageable. Then why are you attending the Math Olympiad class? To do assignments. Jackson felt that the Roaring Flame Society had welcomed someone of another kind. Feeling indignant, he continued to ask, "What about after completing your assignments?" She looked at him in confusion. "By the time I finish the assignments, it's time to sleep. Could it be that you still have time?" Every day, when she was doing her assignments, she felt that time was insufficient. She wished to break 1 second into 2 seconds and use them. Jackson was in a trance. He had never done any assignments. Sophia continued walking, and all of a sudden, she seemed to have thought of something. She paused and turned around. Jackson was in a daze and did not notice, so he accidentally bumped into Sophia. By the time he could steady himself, he was inches away from her and could see the fine hairs on the girl's perfect face. He blushed instantly. Sensing the heat rising to his face, he quickly lifted his head, and when he was about to say something, she spoke slowly. "Is your surname Walker?" Jackson paused. "Ah, correct." Sophia's eyes went blank momentarily and it dawned upon her. "It turns out to be you." Huh. Sophia retracted her gaze and continued walking forward. "They all said that I offended you. Who the heck?" Swallowing his words, Jackson could not bear to speak profanities in front of her. He paused and explained, "You defeated me and I'll listen to you. There's no such thing as being offended." As they spoke, they arrived at a lecture theater. Sophia nodded at him. "I'm going to class." Carrying her books, she walked to the staircase. As he looked at her thin silhouette entering the dilapidated academic building, his heart seemed to be suspended in the air and had no place to land for some unknown reasons. He felt vexed somehow. Seeing him standing in a daze, flame number 1 asked, "Brother Jackson, are we going to play basketball?" "Play your sister." Jackson scolded irritably and kicked the ground. "I'm in no mood today, go home." When Sophia went upstairs, she bumped into her physics teacher, who was also the training instructor for the physics competition class. She obediently greeted, "Hi, Ms. Norman." Ms. Norman smiled when she saw her and headed upstairs with her. When they got to the math classroom and Sophia was about to enter, Ms. Norman suddenly said, "Sophia." She paused in her footsteps and turned to look at her. Ms. Norman smiled. "I heard that you didn't do well in the Olympiad tests, so do you want to consider joining our physics class?" As she said that, old Potter's roars were heard. "Old Norman, it's immoral to covet others behind people's back. Sophia chose our Math Olympiad first." Sophia turned around and saw old Potter coming from downstairs with Dylan and Tina. Dylan frowned and Tina became agitated too. If Sophia had dared to agree earlier, she would have exploded. Ms. Norman refused to admit herself outdone. "Isn't she unsuitable for the Math Olympiad? She scored full marks for the physics exam too, and it's right for her to come to our physics class. Furthermore, Sophia needs to make the decision on her own and it's her own will." Old Potter became anxious and looked at her. "What do you think of it?" Sophia paused and said, "I won't leave." Her assurance made old Potter and Dylan relieved. Tina was relieved as well, but she became lost afterward. Why was she so afraid of Sophia coming to the physics class? Ms. Norman was pretty disappointed and sighed. Seems like we're not fated. As she said that, she was preparing to enter the physics classroom. When she took a step into the classroom, Sophia's voice rang. I can join the physics competition as well. Ms. Norman paused in her tracks and looked at her with glowing eyes. Sure. Tina's heart was in her mouth as she balled her hands up into fists. She looked at Sophia with discontentment and indignation as she said outrightly, "What joke are you cracking? Time is tight and you want to join 2 competitions." Old Potter disapproved as well. That's right, Sophia, you'll be short on time and there might not be enough time to clarify the points. Sophia shot a glance at Tina, who was all tense. As her eyes met the latter's angry stare, she retracted her gaze apathetically. It's all right. Seeing her insistence, Old Potter and Ms. Norman discussed and decided that she would attend the Math Olympiad on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and the Physics one on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Gerald left work early and returned home. He took the tea leaves and wanted to visit the Walker family and sound them out. As he was leaving, Old Lady Turner sat relaxedly on the sofa and derided him. If I must say, you should bring Sophia there and apologize. It's a matter between the children, so what's the point of your going? Who in Bin City doesn't know that Elder Walker spoils his grandson? Gerald took a deep breath and suppressed his anger, keeping silent. Old Lady Turner, however, took the gloves off. Anyways, if we offended the Walker family because of Sophia, I'll not let you off. Gerald said dominantly, Mom, if we really offended the Walker family because of little Sophia, I'll leave with Rose and her. Don't worry, we'll not implicate the Turner family. Without giving his mother a chance to speak, he left. 30 minutes later, Gerald stood outside of Walker family's gate, and the manor's tall walls kept him outside. The secretary was blocking him at the gate as well, but he spoke politely. Mr. Turner, please head back. Elder Walker isn't feeling well and shouldn't be meeting guests. Gerald asked, when will be a good time? The secretary stood up straight and laughed. This will depend on Elder Walker. He could not even enter the gate at all. Furrowing his brows, he passed the tea to the secretary. Then help me pass this to Elder Walker. This is just some tea. Looking at the gift in his hands, the secretary froze. Chapter 21. Gerald's tea was placed in a carrier. The secretary did not even need to see what was inside to know that it must be something of high value. Hence, after a glance, he said, that cannot do. Elder Walker had specifically ordered, refuse gifts. As he saw that even the gift was being rejected, Gerald's face turned even bitter. Is it really because little Sophia offended the Walker family? While he was thinking this, a convertible with its roof open drove in. The large metal gates parted open and the secretary moved to the side, then respectfully addressed, Young Master Addison. Jackson waved at him in greeting, then slowly drove into the compound. Gerald frowned. The young man's complexion seemed fine. This meant that what the supposed, unwell, Elder Walker had said was merely an excuse. Idling here for any longer would only offend the other party. Just as Gerald was about to leave and think of another solution, the car that had driven in slowly reversed its way out. Jackson looked at him and asked with hesitation, Sophia's father. He had seen Gerald in other events before. Gerald nodded and admitted openly, yes. In the next instant, Jackson hurriedly alighted from the car and greeted him politely, Uncle Turner, are you here for a visit? Hurry and come in. Gerald was usually a calm person, but now, even he was totally dumbstruck. What is happening? The secretary was even more at a loss. Young Master Addison, Elder Walker said. Jackson cut him off in annoyance. Let's talk inside if there is a need to. Is halting our guests outside our door part of our Walker family's hospitality? Secretary, Young Master Addison, you used to ignore everyone. Have you ever shown any hospitality? Alas, he did not say this out loud. After they entered the living room, Jackson said, Uncle Turner, have a seat first. I'll go call the old man. He then noticed the gift in his hands and said, is this a gift? I'll help you pass it in. Gerald nodded, feeling awkward. He then sat down on the sofa beside them. With the gift in hand, Jackson walked in. Elder Walker was sitting at the balcony and basking in the sun. When he saw his grandson walk in, he sighed. "Did you skip class again?" Jackson walked over. "You have a guest." Elder Walker waved at him. "I'm not seeing anyone. I won't be seeing anyone for the time being." Jackson squatted down and tugged his beard. "Old man, you must definitely meet this guest." The old man yelped in pain and sat up, swatting his grandson's hand. "Show some respect to your elders." He then peered at the gift box in his grandson's hands and asked curiously, "Who is this guest that you place so much importance on?" "It's fine if I have to meet him, but we must agree to not accept any gifts." The latter simply stuffed the gift in his hands, though. "You must accept it." Elder Walker sighed. "You don't understand. Some higher up came recently and I will get in trouble if I accept any gifts during this dangerous period." Although Jackson was a rascal, he knew to not harm his own grandfather. Still, if they did not accept the gift, wouldn't they embarrass Uncle Turner? He eyed the gift in his hands and decided to open up the carrier. "I'll see if the gift is a valuable item. Just accept it if it's not, or Uncle Turner might feel humiliated." Elder Walker was about to speak when he spotted an extremely familiar tea leaves box being retrieved from the carrier. Jackson quizzically studied the box. "Old man, why does this gift look awfully familiar?" The old man stood up in agitation. How could it not be awfully familiar? It was his tea. Through simple luck and coincidence, he'd managed to purchase this 150 grams of Da Hong Pao. He could not bear to drink it and, hence, had always stored it preciously. It was then taken away from him with just one order by General Brown. Was it being returned now? That's not right. General Brown said that this tea is a betrothal present. Betrothal present? We don't have a daughter in our house. No, I'm going in the wrong direction. Could it be that General Brown's fiancée is from the Turner family? Elder Walker gulped nervously, then snatched the tea over, asking, "Is there a young girl of marriageable age in the Turner family?" Jackson nudged his lips. "None of marriageable age, but there are two in their high school senior year. I forgot what one is called anyway. She is engaged to the Themes family. And another." He paused at this point, then continued in an unnatural tone, "is called Sophia. She is the daughter of the Turner family who went missing 18 years ago. She was recovered just a few days ago." Recovered just a few days ago. General Brown also came to Bin City a few days ago. The dots immediately connected together and Elder Walker arrived at a conclusion and at the candidate, Sophia. He panicked. The person that came from the Turner family is Sophia's father. Elder Walker felt his legs turn weak. His head spun a little. Then that is General Brown's father-in-law. He did not dare to put on any airs and immediately ran out with the tea leaves in hand. Gerald was currently feeling uneasy. From the attitude Jackson displayed just now, it did not seem like he and little Sophia are enemies. But Elder Walker is not meeting anyone. Just as he was thinking this, he heard footsteps and Elder Walker ordering his employees, "Hurry, prepare a cup of high-grade red tea for my great-nephew." With that voice, Elder Walker's silhouette appeared. Gerald hurriedly stood up and was just about to greet him respectfully when the latter quickly walked over and said in an ingratiating tone, "Nephew Turner, apologies for the neglect." Startled by his attitude, Gerald hurriedly bent at the waist. "It was I who arrived too abruptly." Elder Walker grabbed his arm tightly, not allowing him to lower his head, then gestured for him to sit on the sofa. No, your presence here is an honor to our humble home." Gerald's mind went blank. "Elder Walker, I'm afraid that I am undeserving of such words." Elder Walker chuckled. "There is no such thing, my great-nephew. Just speak your mind if you need anything. As for this tea." After class, Sophia returned home and holed up in her room to spam question banks. She exited her room only when she was called down for dinner. At the dining table, she spotted the old patriarch and matriarch. Tina was seated opposite her and only Gerald was missing. Perplexed, she took a mouthful of greens, then looked at her mother. "Mom, where is Dad?" At that last word, Dad, she had hesitated for some time before finally forcing the word out. Having been called Mom for the past few days, Rose did not display as much agitation as the first time. Still, hearing her daughter say, "Dad," she was exhilarated. She first grabbed a piece of pork ribs for her, then replied with a hint of worry, "Your dad went to the Walker family and isn't back yet." Old Lady Turner coldly harumphed. "A kind mother makes a wastrel. Rose, you and Gerald dote on Sophia too much, and that resulted in today. Look at how stingy and petty she is. She is the total opposite of our little Tina, who is a fine lady. Little Tina, eat up. Look how skinny you have become recently. Don't fall sick. I am still waiting for you to win a trophy back for physics." Alas, Tina froze when she heard this. Her head shot up in Sophia's direction. Before she could say anything, a ruckus could be heard from the door. Gerald walked in with a frown and a perplexed expression. His wife, Rose, hurriedly stood up. "You're back." She then spotted the tea leaves in his hands. Elder Walker didn't accept it. Pock. Old Lady Turner slammed the chopsticks on the table. "Hear me. How could Elder Walker be appeased without us beating Sophia to a pulp? Look, he doesn't even want to accept the tea leaves. Now, the project is already a goner." The old patriarch turned to him nervously but saw his son shake his head. The latter still had a confused expression. "No, Elder Walker said that this project will be given to the Turner family, and that he will gift this tea to me." Chapter 22. The entire room fell silent. Gerald spent the whole drive home pondering, but he still did not understand what this meant. He had brought the tea leaves as a gift, but why was it gifted back to him? Amid everyone's deep pondering, Old Lady Turner smirked. "That must be mockery, right? Our old man is not even qualified to drink this tea. Do you think you have the fortune to digest it? So much for giving you the project. As long as the contract is not signed, everything is an empty promise. He might just be giving you empty hope and a flash in the pan." Gerald disagreed with her, though. What status did the Walker family have? If they wanted to crush someone, all they needed to do was to directly display their attitude. Would they need to trick him like this? Old Master Turner deliberated a little further than the rest. Did he mention Sophia's matter? Gerald shook his head. Elder Walker didn't mention anything. He doesn't seem to know about the children's matters. Old Master Turner then turned to look at Sophia, who had been sitting there and silently having her meal. "Sophia, did Jackson go looking for you today?" Sophia was devouring her meal as she wanted to hurry back to her room to study more questions. Upon hearing the question, she first swallowed the food in her mouth, then answered in a laid-back manner, He did." Her mother panicked. "Did he do anything to you? Or say anything?" The old patriarch panicked too and cut in, "Sophia, what exactly is the matter between you and Jackson? Tell us everything from start to end." She paused, then put her chopsticks down. She politely turned to the old patriarch and said, "I didn't offend Jackson. I am now his boss and he listens to me." "What?" Both the old patriarch and matriarch were stunned, seeming to not have expected this answer. Similarly, Rose's eyes widened. In contrast, Tina was not surprised at all, having seen the whole group of people standing before the girl and obediently calling her Sister Sophia. She merely tightened her grip around her chopsticks. Rather, it was Gerald who seemed to have an epiphany. No wonder Jackson was so polite to me today when he usually ignored everyone and was extremely prideful. Did Elder Walker give the project to us because of Jackson? How can that be? Old Lady Turner was the first to retort. Those are simply the children's matters. How can it affect our project? Jackson is not such a resourceful person. Gerald's eyes darkened. "Mom, I remember you saying yesterday that Elder Walker accedes to any of his grandson's requests. Have you already forgotten this? Or are you unwilling to believe that the Walker family only gave this project to us on little Sophia's account?" This one sentence struck the bullseye of the old lady's thoughts. Her face turned beet red as she pointed at him in anger. After a few breaths, she finally spoke. "So what if I don't believe it? She is just a wretch who came back from the orphanage. What kind of abilities does she have to make Jackson listen to her? What does she rely on? Her face." At the words, "her face," everyone turned to look at Sophia in unison. The girl sat there quietly and aloofly, ignoring the humiliation the old lady threw her way. Her huge and beautiful black eyes seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist, giving off a mysterious feeling. Beautiful, exquisite, and even more pleasing than idols. Her facial features could indeed be relied upon. This thought floated into the minds of the few. Even Gerald tensed up his jaw. Don't tell me Jackson has fallen in love with my daughter. The old patriarch seemed a little delighted as he inquired uncertainly, as Jackson. Alas, he was cut off by Gerald mid-speech. Out of the question. That lad learns no knowledge or skill and knows only how to fight and get into trouble every day. Little Sophia definitely cannot be with him. Old Lady Turner instinctively looked down on the mentioned girl. Yo, you don't even fancy Jackson. Then who else can you fancy? Dylan is an impressive one, but do you think he will fancy her? Right as this was said, the taut string that had been in Tina's mind ever since she found out that Sophia was going to participate in the physics Olympiad snapped. She bolted from her seat. Sophia, tell me, are you still longing after Dylan? She gritted her teeth. You clearly do badly in exams, but you still stayed on in the mathematical class like a leech. You are doing this just to be able to get close to him, right? Today, you even schemed to get into the physics class just to prove that you are good in your studies, all just to give Dylan a better impression of you, right? Her eyes turned red at this point. Old Lady Turner instantly became flustered. She got up and walked over to her favored granddaughter, patting her shoulders. Little Tina, don't cry. Grandma will get justice for you. Sophia, go withdraw from that mathematical and physics Olympiad. You are not allowed to get near Dylan again. Sophia had just picked up her chopsticks and was about to resume her meal. When she heard this, she slowly looked up. Before she could say anything, Rose snapped frantically, Mom, you cannot be this biased. Little Sophia is good in her studies, so why must she give up the Olympiads? Also, don't forget that Dylan was originally little Sophia's fiancé. Tina retorted hysterically the next instant, Dylan is my boyfriend. Mine. Is that so? The calm Gerald looked at her. Have you guys gotten engaged? Tina had always been a little fearful of this big uncle since she was young. Hence, she did not dare shout at him but only stared at him blankly. Her big uncle was right. They had not gotten engaged yet and Dylan was therefore not her fiancé. Her body swayed a little, then she suddenly clutched onto Old Lady Turner and wept. Grandma, they are all bullying me. The old lady felt her heart ache. She turned to glare at Gerald. I have already agreed with the Themes family on this. What do you mean by that? The latter's jaw was still tensed up. Based on what Tina had said just now, he suddenly had a thought. He used to think that little Sophia and Dylan did not have a common language and, hence, he did not bother clamoring for this matrimony. However, if her daughter liked Dylan, then he would help her to snatch her fiancé back. As he thought of this, he turned to look at his daughter. Little Sophia, what do you think? Do you want the marriage arrangement back? Everyone turned to look at Sophia. She had wanted to interrupt many times. Seeing that everyone had finally shut up, she then slowly enunciated, no need for that trouble. She continued slowly, I already have a boyfriend. Everyone else. Gerald had an ominous feeling inside. Don't tell me it's really Jackson. Rose frantically asked, who is it? The boss of a provision shop. Not Jackson. This thought popped into Gerald's mind first, then he was stunned. Provision shop. The first impression he had of this term was darkness, clutter, and low income from the sales, which could only barely sustain a normal life. He looked at her blankly in surprise. How did you start dating this boyfriend? Sophia sighed. Can't we speak after finishing our meal? Still, as a polite person, she proceeded to answer, because I said I will give him money. So he agreed to be my boyfriend. There was pin-drop silence immediately. After a while, Rose stuttered out, Little Sophia, what stage have you and he progressed to? Sophia thought for a while, then answered in a serious and emotionless manner, I will feel a pain in my heart if I don't see him. Chapter 23. Rose clutched her chest, having evidently been dealt a huge blow. Gerald wanted to speak more on the matter, but Rose stopped him by shaking her head lightly. Old Master Turner also frowned. What is this nonsense? Old Lady Turner also grasped at the chance to mock her. Take a look. This is what a wretched savage is, no sense of shame. How old is she only? And she is already paying for a toy boy outside. Someone who opens a provision shop, he must be one of the hooligans on the streets, right? Tina did not expect such a turn of events either. All her anger from just now instantly dissipated. Cousin, don't tell me you were that bewildered by the reneging on your marriage arrangement with Dylan. You've been back for only a few days and you've already found a random boyfriend. No matter how unhappy you are, you shouldn't cheapen yourself like this. Shut up. Just as she wanted to continue, Rose suddenly roared, stunning her. Rose had always been a mild-mannered person. Hence, she had little to no presence in the house usually. It was Tina's first time seeing her flare up. As this concerned Sophia's reputation, her attitude was very stern. It is normal for your sister to have a boyfriend. How can a young girl like you spout such abominable words? Do you believe that the Themes family will not dare to renege on their marriage arrangement if I insist on it and make this into a huge issue, simply because they care about their reputation? That way, this marriage arrangement will still be your elder sister's. It will have nothing to do with you at all. Tina widened her eyes in shock, then inched toward the old lady. Grandma, look at her. The old lady instinctively wanted to speak up, but at this point, Rose turned her sharp gaze onto her. Also, Mom, you claim that little Sophia is a savage, but what are you implying about Gerald? Do not speak those words you just did ever again. If word gets out, they might even think that there is a problem with our Turner family's home education. It's fine if you don't like little Sophia, but aren't you afraid of sabotaging Tina's reputation? The old lady was made speechless by this. Rose then took a deep breath. Rose's always giving in and taking the back seat had only caused old lady Turner to go from bad to worse. She had to be much more assertive now, even if just for little Sophia. She then turned to look at the old patriarch. Dad, from the moment you brought our Turner family to prosperity, the people outside have always pointed at us, saying that we are uncultured. Hence, we should be more mindful of our choice of words and actions. The volume of our voices does not correlate to the extent by which our actions are justified. We should refrain from making a joke out of ourselves only for others to scold us for being a nouveau riche behind our backs. The old patriarch placed the Turner family's dignity and reputation as the top priority. These words woke him up, as though someone had drizzled ice water on him. The second son's wife was the only person in this household who'd originated from high society. Alas, the couple lived outside most of the time and, hence, old lady Turner became the manager of the house. Recalling her recent performance, the old patriarch immediately made a decision. Rose, your mom has aged, so let her retire now. Gerald is also about to take over on my side, so you should also start taking up the role of the Turner family's matriarch. This was him passing the authority of managing the house to Rose. Old lady Turner was infuriated. Old man, that shall be it. The old patriarch concluded. For the rest of the meal, both Tina and old lady Turner had no appetite and did not ingest much. Sophia did not seem to be affected, though. She went upstairs to continue plowing through questions after she was done with her meal. When Gerald and Rose returned to their room, the former's look of worrying intensified. Why didn't you let me ask and make the situation clear? Little Sophia is so naive, we can't let her be lied to. The latter sighed. Both of us have not been by her side for the past 18 years, after all. Although the child is not in the right to get into a relationship early, it is also not right for us to be this agitated. Moreover, she is just dating and not going to be engaged. Many underground relationships in high school do not last either, so let's just monitor it for now. The man repressed the anxiety in his heart and gave serious thought to this first before saying, I don't have very high expectations for the child. What we earn is sufficient to let her live the rest of her life peacefully. I hope only that little Sophia can smile happily. Since she likes that person so much that she will feel sad over not meeting him, let's not forcefully interfere with her. Rose then moved to walk out of the room. Gerald, what are you going to do? She raised her chin slightly. As this is my first day as the matriarch, little Sophia will have bird's nest to eat tonight. Gerald, I'm being sidelined now that you have a daughter. The next day, Sophia went to visit her maternal grandparents with her parents. After a 3-hour-long car ride, they finally reached a county. There was a city hospital next to the area her maternal grandparents were staying in. When she followed them into the neighborhood and into the living quarters, her mother explained to her, Both of them have applied for retirement after your grandfather got sick, so they have come back to their hometown to recuperate in peace. Sophia nodded. Her grandparents stayed in a 3-room flat with simple mahogany furniture. At the side, there was a huge bookcase, and before it lay a table sprawled with unfinished calligraphy words. One could see that this was a scholarly family with one glance. When they entered, her maternal grandmother, Daisy, hushed them, then pointed at the master bedroom. "The psychiatrist is treating your grandpa. Let's wait a while." Sophia nodded, then followed her mother to sit down in the living room. After a while, a rustle could be heard near the door and a young man dressed in a white shirt and pants walked out. The moment he stepped out, Sophia felt as though all the light in the room was being directed at him. The man was refined and handsome. He had soft features and wore a pair of gold-framed spectacles, giving off a reliable and composed aura. It was the total opposite of the dangerous feeling Jasper gave off. Daisy introduced, "This is Dr. Foster. He is only 26 this year but is already a very famous psychiatrist. Your grandpa's situation has not worsened in the past year, all thanks to Dr. Foster's weekly psychological counseling." Rose clearly knew the man as she smiled and said, "Thank you, Dr. Foster." The doctor pushed his glasses up. His long and slender fingers, accompanied by his gold-framed spectacles, made him look exceptionally pleasing to the eyes. He eyed Sophia, then quickly put on a warm smile. "You're welcome. I'll be taking my leave now." Watching as he picked up his medical box and moved to leave, Sophia suddenly said, "Mom, Granny, I'll send Dr. Foster off." She strode out behind him after saying this. The door closed behind her. While the two of them waited for the elevator, Dr. Foster smiled and said in a warm and deep voice, "The last time I visited the orphanage, the director said that your birth parents have come to fetch you. I didn't expect us to meet again in such a coincidental way." Sophia stared at him with her black eyes. What a coincidence, Brother Julian. Julian Foster. For the past 2 years, he had regularly visited the orphanage to help the unsociable children. Sophia did not know how to socialize and had little to no feelings. The orphanage director had even requested Julian to give her a psychiatric assessment, and the result was that everything was normal about her. After that, the two would always chat for a while every time he visited the orphanage. He could be considered as Sophia's only friend outside. Seeing how obedient and sensible she was, Julian rubbed her head. "Why do you look like you have a lot on your mind?" He looked at her patiently after saying this. After 2 seconds, the girl answered, "Brother Julian, does hypnosis really exist in this world?" She found that, be in love or die, cursed to be too mystical. After thinking about it for a long time, she started to suspect that she had been hypnotized. Specifically, that she was under hypnotic suggestion. Julian was a reliable psychiatrist to her. For some reason, she felt that he'd provide her a clue. Chapter 24. Ding. The elevator arrived. Both of them entered together. On the way down, Julian pushed his glasses up. There were no cracks in his kind expression. "Hypnosis does exist, but this has nothing to do with your condition because I do not see any hint that you're under hypnosis." Sophia's large eyes paused at a spot. She did not suspect his words, but if this was not hypnosis, what else could it be? Amid her confusion, the elevator reached the first level. Julian smiled. "Do you have a phone now?" She replied, "Yes." The two of them stared at each other momentarily. Julian then sighed helplessly. "When people ask you if you have a phone, it means that they are asking for your number. Give me your phone number. You can call me anytime if you need to in the future." Sophia came to this realization, then slowly took out her phone. After exchanging contacts with him, she then looked up. "Goodbye, Brother Julian." She turned around to go back up only after the doctor had disappeared from her sight. When she entered, Daisy was speaking to Rose. "This is how it should be. She will always reach for more after she is given a treat whenever you give in to her. Sigh, I should never have agreed to let you marry Gerald back then." Cough. The man, who had been sitting beside them awkwardly, made a small sound to signal his presence. Daisy peered at him in dissatisfaction but did not speak any heavy-handed words. Instead, she waved Sophia over. "Come, I'll bring you to see your grandpa." Sophia nodded. She followed her maternal grandmother into the bedroom and spotted an old man, who had a head of white hair, sitting on the bamboo lounge chair with his eyes closed. He was basking in the sunlight. When the two entered, the old man opened his eyes. He was first a little surprised at seeing Sophia, but he soon smiled. "Little Rose, aren't you in university? Why are you back?" Sophia was a little taken aback. Her maternal grandmother sighed. "He has lost part of his memories, and so all he remembers are things from 20 years ago." She then turned to the old man. "This is little Sophia, Little Rose's daughter." Old man Foster was not mentally unsound, though. He even smiled and replied, "What use is there lying to me? How can little Rose possibly have a daughter this big?" He seemed to be a little sleepy as, right after saying this, he rested against the chair and fell asleep. At noon, Rose and Daisy were cooking in the kitchen. Sophia wanted to help out but was chased out. Her father had brought her maternal grandfather out for a stroll. Hence, having nothing to do, she was regretting not bringing any papers with her. She could even finish one set of questions during this time. Bored, she paced around the bookshelf in the living room. By chance, she spotted a paper that had turned yellow. She picked it up out of curiosity and, after reading a few lines, she realized that they were actually all mathematical knowledge. She proceeded to read it intently. A sudden voice interrupted her. "Are you interested in this? It's yours, then." She looked up and spotted her father helping her maternal grandfather into the house. She had unknowingly read this for 1.5 hours. Her eyes lit up. "Okay." Old man Foster seemed to be ravenous as he went toward the dining table. "So hungry, so hungry." They ate lunch together, and at 3 p.m., they drove back home. Along the way, Sophia suddenly felt a dull pain in her chest. She hurriedly sat up and recalled how she met Jasper. At this moment, Rose suddenly asked, "Little Sophia, what's on your mind?" She silently turned her head and answered honestly, "Boyfriend." "Rose, what do I do when I feel as if I have suddenly been force-fed dog food?" Still, since the topic was brought up, she wanted to inquire a little more to understand the situation. "Little Sophia, what do you like about him?" Sophia pondered this seriously for some time, then looked back at her mother. The latter knew that she was slower in terms of response and hence asked hesitantly, "Is he handsome?" Jasper recalled Jasper's features, which, although frequently shrouded in darkness, were still beautiful. She nodded. Rose, does my daughter like him for his face?" The driver, Gerald, also coughed at this. "That little Sophia, do you still have enough money?" Since the other party seemed to be aiming for his daughter's money, he must have swindled quite a bit, right? Just as he thought this, Sophia nodded. I still have 100,000 yuan. Gerald, I gave you only 100,000 yuan, right? Yes. Then how much did you give your boyfriend? 300. The entire car went silent. After a short pause, Rose questioned while still dumbstruck, "You give only 300 a week. Is the upkeep of a toy boy this cheap?" By the time they returned home, Rose was still in a dumbfounded state. She wanted to ask for more details, but Sophia had already returned to her room and flipped open her mathematical Olympiad questions. She spent the whole of Sunday completing question after question, and it was finally Monday. When the car stopped in front of Night Blooming Jasmine Provision Shop, Tina peered outside then proceeded to mock, "I was wondering why you always alight here every morning. So it's to meet that toy boy." Ever since finding out that Sophia's boyfriend was a mere provision shop boss, she seemed to have regained her sense of superiority. She raised his chin slightly. "Do you know, when Dylan was in junior year, he had already obtained an undergraduate position in some top schools. But he rejected all of them because his aim is Averna University. Everyone who graduates from there will be elites in their field." After Rose's previous disciplining, Tina had become much more cautious and learned to make comparisons in a roundabout manner. Alas, Sophia did not take her bait at all. She simply alighted and entered the provision shop. As usual, Jasper was seated behind the counter with a book in hand. He was lazily reading it, and when she entered, his dark brown eyes would flit over to her. He then put his book down and walked over to the dining table with practiced ease. Everything was so natural and normal. She could not put a finger to this feeling and, hence, did not harp much on it. As per usual, she ate breakfast with canine teeth and Jasper. After that, she sat there dazedly while clutching her chest. Jasper stood up and leaned over, his low voice rumbling by her side. "Why, you can't bear to leave me?" She stared at him silently, then shook her head, seemingly perplexed. "My chest seems to be hurting a little." The man was slightly stunned at this. His lips then slowly parted into a helpless smile. His laughter was extremely attractive, as though there was something in it that hooked at her heartstrings. He then said, "Little kid, give me your hand." In a trance, she extended her hand out and it was quickly held by the man. She stiffened as her mind went blank. The man's hands were huge. They could totally encompass her hands. His palms felt like a ball of fire. The scorching temperature flowed in from his hand to her body, making her feel her cheeks heat up. Just as she realized that she should be resisting him, the man asked, "Does it not hurt anymore?" She was stunned. She paused to feel it and replied, dumbstruck, "Yes." "Why?" Jasper smiled. "Maybe simply meeting every day is not sufficient to be considered as being in love, so we need to hold hands." In Sophia's mind, a question mark was slowly drawn out. She instinctively asked, "Then what if holding hands is also insufficient next time?" Chapter 25. The provision shop fell silent at this. Half a beat later, PFF'd. Jasper burst out laughing again. He bent down, lowering his head to her level. Staring at the girl's pristine, fair skin, he purposely moved closer before saying, "Little kid, what do you think?" Right after performing this amorous flirting, he waited for the girl to blush in embarrassment and shyness, but unexpectedly. Sophia blinked her large eyes with a lost expression. She ignored the man's breath by her ears and pondered this somberly. As though she was a studious student seeking help from her teacher, she answered, "The stages of a relationship should be confession, then holding hands, followed by kissing, hugging, and finally." At this point, she turned to look at him in astonishment. Jasper. Her dark irises seemed to constrict as her misty eyes colored with incomprehension. While her face remained stoic, she was actually thinking inside that if Jasper dared to request her to sleep with him, she would immediately serve him a dish of army boxing. The two were in such close proximity to each other that their breaths mingled. Under her glare, Jasper retracted his gaze and stuffed his hands into his pocket. He then slowly stood back up and said in an exasperated tone, "Don't worry. Go to school." "Don't worry about what?" Sophia silently rebuked inside. Still, she picked up her bag and decided to proceed with caution. At least, she did not feel repulsed by the notion of holding hands for now. She did not notice a certain person's ears being dyed in a deep red. Chris had already hidden in the corner, trying to reduce his presence as lowly as possible. As the person who had witnessed his boss trying but failing at flirting, he wondered, am I going to be silenced? The moment Sophia stepped into the classroom, she already saw her classmates pointing fingers at her. The words, "keeping a toy boy," entered her ears. When she turned her head over, the few people gossiping promptly shut their mouths. Someone even said softly, "Hurry and stop talking. What will we do if we offend her and the roaring flame society comes for us?" This was the first time Sophia found those few flames to be useful. At least, they allowed her ears to remain much cleaner. After 6 periods were over, she had started packing up to move to the Olympiad extra classes when the flames from the Roaring Flame Society came over again. Jackson crossed his arms and stood at the side while flame number 1 sat on Hannah's seat to speak. "Sister Sophia, are you going to class again?" When she did not answer, he continued, "Are you going to request us to stay here, revise, and do our homework?" Sophia, "Yes." Flame number 1 instantly revealed a slack expression. "Huh, Brother Jackson, what should we do?" Jackson was also dumbstruck. "Do homework." He did not like the idea at all, but when he saw the girl's calm expression, he quickly responded, "She is the boss now, so listen to her." This resulted in a series of groans from the flames as they all dejectedly walked out. "And here I wanted to go watch a movie." "Me too. I wanted to go play basketball." Jackson kicked the few complaining. "I'll check your homework tomorrow. We must fulfill the boss's orders." "Brother Jackson, does copying homework work? What do you think?" The few people left just as quickly as they arrived. Sophia watched them disappear at the entrance and could only swallow the words, "No need," that she had yet to utter. She was stupefied. She would not interfere in however others lived their lives, just as she did not request for this group of people to dye their hair back. She had also never considered asking the flames to become a bookworm like her. In fact, that, yes, had been an answer to flame number 1's first question. However, she realized that other than Jackson, she did not even know the names of the rest. Hence, she had no way of informing them one by one either. In the end, she only sighed, carried her books, and left. Her actions were slow and she was always unhurried. When she was out the door, Tina spoke to Dylan while following behind her. She personally said that her boyfriend is a hooligan. He agreed to be her boyfriend because she was going to give him money. Dylan, this type of girl doesn't have respect for herself. We should stay farther away from her. Dylan stared at Sophia for a long while, then retracted his gaze with a profound look. Tina then entered the physics class while he followed behind Sophia and sat down behind her. After a long while, he could not resist speaking. Did you find a random person just because you were too shocked by my reneging on the marriage arrangement? He frowned when the girl kept her head lowered and did not reply. Don't do that. Girls should respect and love themselves more. The toy boy you are keeping just has his eyes on your money. She continued, ignoring him. At this, he could not help but poke her shoulders with his pen. He then saw Sophia slowly turning around with a blank gaze. When she met his eyes, she frowned. What? Dylan. She continued in a frustrated tone, don't disturb me. She calmly turned back and engrossed herself in her questions. Dylan, so after I've spoken so much, she actually didn't hear a single word of it. When he felt the curious gazes of the surrounding students, he felt so embarrassed that he quickly lowered his head. He was too prideful. With a grudge in his heart, he looked up and noticed that she had placed the finished paper to the side. They were all foundational questions and were the comparatively easy ones that tested only the key knowledge points. He could not help but mockingly think to himself, her results for the mathematical Olympiad are indeed very terrible. That must be why old Potter gave her such foundational questions, right? The Math Star competition is this week, so I must definitely score better than she does and show her what true abilities really are. The 2 periods for the Mathematics Olympiad flew by in the blink of an eye. Sophia did not leave immediately. When she finished the last question and looked up, she found that everyone else had already left. She packed up her books and returned to her classroom to retrieve her bag. Along the way, she kept thinking about the last question and whether she had utilized anything out of the scope of the syllabus. Like this, she dazedly walked into the classroom. Just as she entered, she was almost knocked backward by a girl who was rushing out. She looked up and fleetingly saw the girl's eyes. The girl glared hatefully at her, then quickly left. Was that Hannah? She was confused but had a feeling that it was not her. After Sophia and Tina had returned home and were having dinner, old Master Turner picked up a call. When he returned, his expression had turned solemn as he spoke to Gerald. I know why Elder Walker is not accepting any gifts now. Gerald hurriedly inquired, why? The old patriarch sat down and pondered for a while before saying, I received some internal news that a big shot has arrived at Bin City. Old Lady Turner was very curious. What kind of big shot? The old patriarch shook his head. I don't know his exact identity, but Elder Walker is very polite to him, so he is definitely not an ordinary person. On our side, we shouldn't stand out too much for the time being. Yes, Gerald acknowledged, then continued asking, Dad, do you know this person's name? If we happen to meet him, we should take care to not accidentally offend him. The old man nodded. I was just about to speak on this. Next time, if anyone hears this person's name, remember to not offend him. Right after he said this, Sophia put her chopsticks down and looked at him with a serious look. Chapter 26. Seeing that everyone looked over, the old patriarch then slowly enunciated a name, Chris Connor. Chris Connor. The name was very normal. Seeing that the old patriarch had nothing more to say, Sophia picked up her chopsticks and continued eating. Gerald frowned. I haven't heard of anyone exceptionally important from the Connor family. Who exactly is this person? Old Master Turner shook his head. Anyway, just take note if you guys meet someone with this name. Apparently, he hides in some unknown corner and no one knows why he is here in Bin City. Just don't offend him. Gerald thought a little deeper. Is Elder Walker preparing anything? The old patriarch replied, it will be Elder Walker's 69th birthday soon and he will invite the man. Everyone can start preparing their outfits. The latter was meant for Rose. She quickly nodded her head. After dinner, Sophia returned to her room to practice her questions. At exactly 10 p.m., someone knocked on her door. Rose then walked in with a bowl of bird's nest with milk upon receiving her acquiescence. She placed the bird's nest soup on the side. When she spotted the thick stack of papers, she could not help but say, "Little Sophia, don't force yourself too much. You must rest too." "Okay," Sophia replied without even raising her head. Rose, after stuffing the bird's nest into her hands, she said, "You must rest for a while." Sophia sighed. She was a little helpless against Rose and quickly devoured the bird's nest soup. After that, she could not help but peer at the mathematics questions again. Then Rose said, "Little Sophia, do something else first. Take a 10-minute rest." The girl was confused. Do what? Rose was also lost. Right, what should you do? She eyed Sophia's phone. Don't you chat with your boyfriend? Sophia, no need. The former could not help asking further, you didn't go out during the weekend either. Why didn't you guys go watch a movie? Rose felt fatigued inside. In other families, they were worried that dating would cause their child to neglect their studies, but as a mother, why was she always encouraging her child to go out to date? Still, before she could say this, Sophia quickly answered, watching a movie is a huge waste of time. It affects my studies. Rose. Sophia blinked, then asked slowly, Mom, may I continue with my questions? Rose. She picked up the bowl and moved for the door. Fine. Remember to sleep early. As Sophia studied until late at night every day, Rose would habitually let her sleep a few more minutes and pack her breakfast for her so that she could eat on the road. Watching her walk out with her breakfast in hand, Old Lady Turner could not help but mock, do you really think you're a study god after getting first place just once? Other than participating in the mathematical Olympiad, you even registered for the physics one. Hey, are you sure you have enough time? Humans should not be too greedy, lest you end up failing on both ends. Sophia did not listen to her at all and promptly boarded the car. When they reached the provision shop, Tina peered at the place meaningfully and clucked her tongue. Still, knowing that Sophia would not respond to her at all, she could not be bothered to say anything. Sophia silently alighted from the car. Ding, ding. While they were eating, the phone rang, signaling a received message. Since Sophia did not use her phone much, it was always in her bag. Hence, she continued eating and did not go check her messages immediately. In contrast, the lackadaisical Jasper looked up. After swallowing his food, he then said, Little kid, you have a message. Sophia continued eating and blandly answered, Oh. But she did not move. Jasper raised an eyebrow and leaned back to look at her bag. His sharp jaw was taut. Not gonna take a look. The girl finished her bun first before picking up her bag to retrieve her phone. Only then did she notice that the message was from Julian. She had saved his contact as Brother Julian. This was the only person in her contact list. Jasper, who had been staring at her, noticed the slight curl of her lips that disappeared in the blink of an eye. His gaze slowly shifted to her phone screen. Even with the distance between them, he, who had good eyesight, still managed to catch sight of the message. Brother Julian, go download WeChat and add me as a friend. It's easier to contact each other this way. He then saw his little girlfriend, who usually had a slow response, quickly switch to the application store, download WeChat, and proceed to register with her phone number. Immediately after she registered, a red-colored 1 appeared on her friend's list. His little girlfriend clicked it without any hesitation and accepted the friend request. After she had completed doing all these, the other party sent a message over, Little Sophia, you should be starting class soon, right? I hope I'm not disturbing you. She was just about to type a reply. However, as she was still eating, it was not exactly convenient. At this moment, Jasper spoke. You can reply using voice message. Click here. He pressed on the voice message button on the chat interface with his long fingers and said in a low voice, "Girlfriend, you can speak now." 2 seconds later, Sophia then spoke. "What's the matter, brother Julian?" When she was done, Jasper released the button and the voice message was sent. Beside them, Chris was totally flabbergasted. His mouth was wide open with the soup dumplings he had eaten inside it. He had forgotten to swallow it. Isn't boss's way of claiming sovereignty too shameless? The corner of his lips twitched. He then watched as the girl placed the phone aside and slowly finished her breakfast. After she was done, she directly grabbed Jasper's hands. Meanwhile, his usually domineering boss was as obedient as a husky. He did not resist at all and even had a hint of doting, seemingly allowing her to do as she pleased. Chris suddenly felt secondhand embarrassment from watching his boss. Jasper lowered his head to look at the girl's pristine and fair fingers. Her hands were so soft, as though they had no bones in them. As he thought of how nice it must be to squeeze her hands, his fingers moved and rubbed against her palms. He was just about to try teasing this little kid when the grip on his hand tightened. Next came the girl's cool yet threatening voice. "Don't move. Jasper." After 10 seconds, when her heart no longer hurt, Sophia released his hand, picked up her bag, and walked out the door as though she had just completed an assignment. The man lowered his head, suddenly feeling as though something was missing in his hands. Meanwhile, Chris waited for a while until his boss's smile had slowly disappeared and he had regained his usual ice coldness before reporting, "Boss, there have been some flies coming over to check us out, so old Walker released a smoke bomb, claiming that I had come over." Jasper. "Oh." Chris thought for a while and said, "He even said that he has invited me for his 69th birthday celebration, and that he will also introduce a girlfriend to me. He. Sophia stepped into the classroom just as the bell rang. Her phone rang right at this moment. Thinking that it must be Julian, she was just about to take a look when she heard the class president's shriek, "Where's the class fund?" The class fund was stolen. The entire class was instantly silenced. Sophia subconsciously turned to look at Hannah, only to find that this talkative person was sprawled on the table. She seemed very fatigued and a little abnormal. Chapter 27. Following that, the classroom exploded in an uproar. "Who cares about that 3,000 yuan? How can it be stolen? Class president, did you misplace it?" "Yes. Class president, you should look again." The poorer students had financial assistance from the school and, hence, they need not be worried about their finances. The rest of them were all from wealthy families. The international school's yearly tuition fee of 500,000 yuan was not something the average family could afford, so it was even more implausible for them to have stolen this money. However, as the class president and mathematics subject representative, Brandon had a frown and said solemnly, "I am sure that I left it in the desk drawer yesterday. I can't be wrong about that." Tina suddenly said in a tone filled with implied meaning, "Actually, there are people who are short on money. Wasn't someone's bank card confiscated by her family?" Everyone promptly turned to look at Hannah. Sophia paused, put down her handphone, and poked the girl. Hannah turned her head around lethargically. Her head was still hanging low. Little Sophia. She had a complicated look on her face. "I dyed my hair back and didn't go out to play the whole weekend. Yesterday, I even listened to you and did my homework. My parents actually praised me this morning." She nudged her lips. "Actually, they always felt that I was too rebellious and didn't like me. They have already given up on me and like only Lauren. I was already used to it and treated it as though I don't have parents, but today." Her voice became softer and softer, and her expression slowly became filled with disorientation. Sophia was unable to understand her complicated feelings, nor did she know how to reassure her. Just as she was concocting a speech to speak to her, Brandon walked over. "Hannah, did you take the class fund?" Hannah instantly jumped in anger upon hearing this. "You're saying that I stole the money? What a joke. Brandon, this is called slandering." The class president had a weak personality and scratched his head in fright. I was only asking." He turned around and moved to leave right after that. Annoyed, Hannah reached into her desk drawer and pulled out the topmost book to place on the table. Right at this instant, a thick envelope fell onto the ground with a loud plop. When Brandon instinctively looked down, he realized with a startle that it was a familiar-looking envelope. He bent down to pick it up. When he opened up the envelope, a huge and thick stack of 50 and 100 bills were revealed. He angrily huffed, "Hannah, so you did steal it." Hannah was dumbstruck too. "Why is the class fund with me?" Tina coldly harumphed. "Shouldn't we be the ones asking you? Why is the class fund with you?" "Hannah, no matter how short on money you are, you shouldn't be resorting to stealing, right?" "Hannah, what does this mean? You must give us an explanation today." Hannah was flustered. "I didn't steal it. Someone must have framed me. Doesn't the classroom have surveillance cameras? Go get it. Check it." Given such an incident, no one was in any mood to study. Moreover, as the first period was Old Potter's mathematics class, he promptly decided to halt the lesson and check the surveillance cameras. The recording showed that around 6 p.m. last night, Hannah entered after everyone had left. She then stole the money from the class presidents, then placed it in her desk drawer. Just as she was leaving, she even almost knocked into Sophia. Hannah was totally dumbstruck to see this. Suddenly, Tina said in a vindicative manner, "Sophia, you clearly saw her acting so suspiciously, but why didn't you stand out to testify just now when we were speaking about it? Are you going to shield her just because you guys are good friends? You are just harming her like this." Sophia was stunned when she saw the recording too. However, when she was accused thus, she turned to look at Tina coldly and replied slowly, "Sometimes, the eye does not see the truth." Although she had only a brief glimpse of that person yesterday, the said person had given her a queer feeling. Tina coldly harumphed, though. The surveillance cameras clearly recorded her. "Sophia, are you still going to protect her now? Could you guys be in cahoots?" Sophia was just about to respond when Hannah suddenly balled up her fists and softly mumbled with her body trembling, I know who it is now." She bolted out of the classroom immediately after saying this. Sophia followed closely behind her, afraid that she would do anything silly. However, the girl dashed into the classroom next door and kicked the door open, with no care that Ms. Smith was currently teaching. Lauren scram out. Sophia followed her line of sight and saw a girl who had the exact same face as Hannah's. The only difference was that while Hannah had long hair, this girl had short hair. Still, the moment she saw her, Sophia was already certain. She is the thief. Office. Lauren stood beside her civic tutor, Ms. Smith. She lowered her head and wiped her tears while softly weeping. Ms. Smith looked at Hannah in disdain, then scoffed. "Old Potter, I don't have any intention of chiding you, but the surveillance cameras clearly showed that it was Hannah. Her results are usually so terrible and she never listens to others. With her bad record, stealing the class fund is normal. What does this have to do with our classes, Lauren?" Old Potter frowned, turning to look at Hannah and Sophia. Hannah stretched her neck out straight and stood with a lackadaisical posture. One of her legs was curved to the side while her eyes were filled with ferocity and rebelliousness. Meanwhile, Sophia quietly and obediently stood there as though she was an outsider. Old Potter asked, "Sophia, is the person you saw yesterday Lauren?" Sophia nodded. "Yes." The tutor frowned. "Although Hannah is disobedient, she has no need to do such a thing. There is indeed a need to investigate this." Ms. Smith sneered. "Lauren's grades are excellent. She is in the top 10 in the level. How can someone like her steal anything? This is clearly a situation of Hannah and your class's Sophia shifting the blame to Lauren." Hannah clenched her jaw but remained silent. Right at this moment, a series of hurried footsteps sounded outside, and soon, Hannah's parents rushed in. Ms. Smith had already explained the situation to them during the call. After the couple entered, Mrs. Nelson glared angrily at Hannah then walked over. "Hawk." She gave the latter a tight slap on her face. "So much for me thinking that you have changed for the better. I didn't expect you to go from bad to worse. You actually joined forces with your classmate to incriminate your elder sister." Hannah's head was tilted from the slap. She balled up her fists. Although there was disbelief in her eyes, the stronger feeling they gave off was one of normalcy, as though she was used to it. "I knew it. Anything I say is useless. You guys will believe only her. She is good in her studies and is a good child, so she will never commit any mistakes. Since we were young, I have always been the only one who will ever make any mistakes. Even if I have a classmate to testify for me. Mrs. Nelson admonished, testify. You are clearly accusing and incriminating Lauren. This person standing with you is definitely also someone improper, and that is why she is taking part in your farce. Old Potter frowned. Parent, please do not speak such uncouth words. This is a school. Mrs. Nelson turned to the tutor. Mr. Potter, you don't have to speak on this further. I will bring her home first, then come back to complete the school withdrawal application later. She then grabbed Hannah's arm and yanked her toward the door. No matter how Hannah struggled, she was, after all, only a high school student, so how could she possibly be a match for her mother's strength? Just as Hannah was almost being yanked out of the office, a beautiful and fair-skinned hand pressed on the madam's shoulders, making her stop in her tracks. Sophia coldly stared at her and slowly enunciated, "Let her go." Chapter 28. Although Sophia's actions looked light and she seemingly only placed her hand on Mrs. Nelson's shoulders, only the latter knew how strong this girl was. She could not break free no matter how she tried. Mrs. Nelson could only stare at her while fuming. This is our family's matter. A little girl like you shouldn't meddle in our affairs. Just as she said that, the force on her shoulders intensified and she felt as if her bones were going to be crushed. She could only let go of Hannah. When Hannah obtained freedom again, she subconsciously hid behind Sister Sophia, who was adept at fighting. Mrs. Nelson wanted to grab her but was urged by old Potter. Mrs. Nelson, keep your cool. We looked for you to settle the problem, so don't start a fight. Moreover, this issue isn't so serious that there's a need for anyone to be suspended from school. Stealing money was a serious matter to an 18-year-old, and getting demerit points was considered the least severe punishment. However, old Potter felt pity toward Hannah. If she were to be brought away like this, her whole life would be ruined. He seamlessly stood in between Sophia and Mrs. Nelson. He was afraid that Mrs. Nelson would hit the class, obedient, sensible, and seemingly feeble Sophia, so he shielded her from the front. Mrs. Nelson wanted to push old Potter aside. Mr. Potter, please move aside and don't defend Hannah. Hasn't she been doing things like this? Let me tell you, it's been a long time since I've been bothered about her, and I just pretend that I don't have a daughter like her. Now that she dared to slander Lauren, I won't let her off easily. She has been like this since she was a child. Not only does she not study well, but she wants to bring her sister down too. Old Potter stopped her anxiously. Mrs. Nelson, calm down. Seeing them quarreling, Sophia spoke slowly, and her calm and clear voice was heard by everyone in the office. So, you're certain that Hannah did it? Mrs. Nelson was stunned before nodding. Yes, Sophia replied. Oh, then we can only call the police. That one sentence made the office quieten down. Mrs. Nelson stopped acting crazy and looked at Sophia in disbelief. She then shot a glance at Hannah. Call the police. Don't you know how Hannah will end up if you call the police? She is an adult and needs to go to jail for stealing money. Hannah shot her a glance and found her both ridiculous and pathetic. Since she was already on Lauren's side and was sure that she was the villain, why did she have to pretend to care for her? Her cheek was burning from the pain, but her heart, which she thought was already numbed, hurt even more. Nobody fought to speak and Sophia could finally open her mouth. She analyzed the situation rationally without any feelings. The criminal investigators have great means. Since the envelope had been under Hannah's desk until it fell out and she did not touch it, the police will be able to match the fingerprints on the envelope. That way, we can find out who the thief is. When she said this, Lauren, who had been sobbing, froze. She lifted her head in disbelief, and when her eyes met Sophia's, she felt those eyes had seen her through. For some unknown reason, Lauren shivered. Sophia did not look at her and said to Hannah, "Do you dare to call the police?" Hannah straightened her back. Yes. When Mrs. Nelson heard their conversation, she was so angered that she laughed. "Do you think that I'll believe you if you call the police?" Hannah, I didn't want to call the police for your sake. If others wronged Lauren, I would have called the police long ago. Go call the police and let them come get the evidence. If you want to go to jail, I won't stop you. Hannah stared at her in disbelief. She and her mother had not been on speaking terms for more than 2 years. She did not believe that even though her mother had just reminded her to have breakfast this morning, they would be at swords' points right now. It was because of Lauren again. Looking at this situation, Sophia spoke no more and fished out her phone from her pocket. She pressed the digits 110, and just as she was about to make the call, Lauren exclaimed with panic, "Don't." Sophia's finger landed on the call button, and she slowly turned around to look. Everyone in the office looked at Lauren as well. She struggled to explain, "Mom, I don't want to pursue this matter further, and you shouldn't pursue it either. Hannah is, after all, my sister, and I don't want her to end up in jail." Mrs. Nelson had a heart-aching expression on her face as she pointed at Lauren and said to Hannah, "See that? She's thinking about you even when you framed her. Hannah, how can you be completely without conscience?" Hannah kept quiet. Lauren hurriedly said, "Hannah, as long as you don't call the police, the matter will pass like this. Since the money isn't lost, Mr. Potter, let's leave it like this." Ms. Smith was cynical. "Have a look, this is the kind of right-mindedness that students who do well in their studies have. Not only are some people immoral, but their studies are poor too." Shooting a glance at Lauren, Sophia saw the fear and fluster on her face just like Hannah did, and she tried to maintain a smile. Retracting her glance, Sophia said, "It's better to call the police." She pressed the call button. Witnessing that, Lauren dashed forward. "No." Yet Mrs. Nelson grabbed her hand. "Lauren, don't bother with her. Since she wants to reap the fruits of her actions, let her be." The call went through and Sophia spoke. "Hello, this is..." Before she could finish speaking, Lauren shouted, "I'm the one who stole it." All of a sudden, the tables were turned and everyone stared at her in utter disbelief. Listening to this, Sophia slowly put down her phone and her screen showed that she still had not made the call. Moments later, Mrs. Nelson rushed up to Lauren and grabbed her shoulders. "Little Lauren, what are you talking about?" Lauren took in a deep breath and said while crying, "Mom, I'm the one who stole it, don't call the police. I'll pay the amount, all right." Upon hearing this, Mrs. Nelson paused for 10 seconds. As she recovered from the disbelief, she shouted, "Little Lauren didn't do this on purpose. It must have been Hannah who drove her to the edge and she merely wanted to give Hannah a lesson. Mr. Potter, Miss Smith, please let this matter rest. Money isn't a problem and we can pay whatever the amount, but please don't give the child demerit points." Her eyes turned red. "That will affect the child's whole life." Hannah stood beside Sophia. Seeing this scene, she did not feel the relief that she expected when the truth had been revealed. When something happened to her, Mrs. Nelson gave her a slap first. Yet when something happened to Lauren, Mrs. Nelson's first reaction was to defend her. They were clearly a pair of twins. However, children who knew how to cry would get sweets, but she was never one who would cry. Ms. Smith did not expect things to turn this way. She frowned. "Lauren, how can you do something like this?" Mrs. Nelson said anxiously, "This is just a squabble between two kids, look." At this moment, footsteps were heard coming from the door. The voice of flame number 1 rang. "Ayo, how lively." Everyone turned around and saw Jackson standing at the door with flame numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. The 4 redheads were especially eye-piercing. Chapter 29. Ms. Smith had wanted to protect Lauren because, after all, she was one of the top 5 students in her class. She was still hoping that Lauren would get good grades during the national examination to raise her KPI. However, when she saw Jackson and the rest, Ms. Smith became timid instantly and kept her mouth shut. Old Potter frowned. "Jackson, why aren't you guys attending class and coming here?" Jackson crossed his arms and looked impatiently at Hannah. "I heard that someone is framing a member of our Roaring Flame Society, so I came to see who is so daring." After saying this, he turned to look at Lauren and the latter shuddered. She frowned in confusion. Isn't the leader of the Roaring Flame Society Sophia now? Jackson should be harboring resentment now, but why is he helping Hannah out? Jackson casually looked at Sophia before staring at Ms. Smith. Since Lauren admitted to it, how should she be punished? Before Ms. Smith could even speak, Mrs. Nelson took a step forward. A small matter like this doesn't need punishment. We can fork out 10 times the amount of the class fund. Jackson raised his chin. Stealing 3,000 yuan and framing her classmate. If both crimes were to be punished, according to the school rules, a serious offense needs to be recorded. Ms. Smith, don't worry about this, I'll talk to the director of teaching about it. Every high school had school rules and did not condone dyeing hair, but Jackson's Roaring Flame Society was able to do as they pleased because Elder Walker was a member of the International Schools Board of Trustees. After speaking, he moved aside and gave way. Sister Sophia, are you going? Sophia, oh, as the only witness, she had been in the office and missed a period. When she brought Hannah to the door, Mrs. Nelson shouted in agitation, Hannah, do you really want to ruin Hannah? How can you be so selfish and heartless? Hannah closed her eyes in pain upon being blamed. This time around, a confused voice rang. This matter, isn't it her own mistake? Why must you say that Hannah ruined her? Mrs. Nelson froze. Everyone in the office turned to look at Sophia. She had always been unemotional, so she looked at Mrs. Nelson with confused eyes as though she was waiting for an answer. Mrs. Nelson could not reply. 2 seconds later, Sophia retracted her gaze and left. When they left the office building and headed back to the academic building, Sophia was walking at the front while Jackson lifted his chin and followed beside her. After settling this matter, Sophia finally took out her phone and read Julian's reply. Julian, little Sophia, you have a boyfriend. Sophia paused momentarily and realized what had happened in hindsight. She pressed the voice message that had been sent previously. Jasper's girlfriend, you can speak now, was heard first, followed by her, what's the matter, brother Julian? Feeling shocked, she paused in her footsteps. Jackson was taken aback by the voice message too. Girlfriend. The people behind did not sense that something was off. After hearing Hannah narrate what had happened, he asked, Sister Sophia, why didn't you call the police right away? If that's the case, Lauren can go to jail. Sophia slowly said, oh, and continued, little talkative, touched that envelope. Flame number 1, huh. After thinking for a moment, he understood that, little talkative, referred to Hannah. Sophia. So, fingerprint matching won't work. Hannah and Lauren were twins who looked really similar. Moreover, Hannah loved to put on thick makeup and it would be easier to pass off as her. They would not be able to differentiate between the two of them through the CCTV footage. Flame number 1 was enlightened. Sister Sophia, it turns out that you're faking it earlier. Powerful. After saying that, he scratched his head and looked at Sophia. Sister Sophia, since you like to give others nicknames, what did you give me? Did you give brother Jackson one too? Sophia looked at his hair in silence and felt guilty. No. After saying this, she tried to cover up as she dipped her head to reply to Julian. Yes, the situation is slightly special. I'll tell you in detail next time. Brother Julian, I'll go to class first. The moment that message was sent, her phone rang again. She left the chat room and found another friend request. Upon clicking on it, she found the person's profile picture to be black and the profile name to be X, while the comment read, it's me. Who are you? Sophia was sure that she did not have a friend like this. Maybe the person added the wrong person. She pressed reject and put the matter behind her mind as she placed her phone in her pocket. In the provision store, someone stared at the word rejected for a moment and chuckled. Chris, who was squatting at one side and playing his game, was shocked by his chuckle. He silently distanced himself away from his boss. 6 periods of classes ended very soon and it was time for the Math Olympiad class again. No, today was the physics competition class. She carried her books, and as she walked to the lecture theater, she saw Hannah and Mrs. Nelson standing not far away. Her mother's eyes were red, and she said something before putting a bank card in Hannah's hands. Hannah shook her head and took a step back. Passing the card back to her mother, she turned around and left. After looking on for a while, Sophia went to attend class. When she entered the physics classroom, she realized that there were fewer students here, only 7 of them. She found a random seat and sat down. Then, she heard Tina's voice. Sophia, you have the mathematics star competition this weekend, right? Can you really attend the physics class today? Sophia ignored her. The boy beside Tina asked. She enrolled in 2 Olympiad classes. Tina nodded and tidied her fringe as she said in pretense, that's right. An Olympiad class has a heavy workload and she studies until late at night every day. I don't know if she can handle both classes well. That boy was baffled. No, you have to give it your all for just one competition, and she enrolled in both to play. Tina, who knows what she's thinking? The rest looked at them but kept quiet. Not more than 5 minutes later, an anonymous thread in the school forum became wildly popular. Is someone being complacent, enrolling in 2 Olympiad classes just because she topped in one exam? Soon, the thread had tens of replies. Who? Senior year Sophia. She is from my math Olympiad class. Let me shed some light. Sophia scored the lowest for the 2 mock exams in the math Olympiad class. I really don't know why old Potter recruited someone like her in. Is it to be a mascot? Perhaps she cheated to get first in the level. The Turner family's eldest young mistress wants to create a curve wrecker image and plate herself with gold in order to mix with the higher echelons of society. Isn't she going overboard? The Math Star competition is around the corner. Let's wait and see. She can't cheat during this kind of competition, and all the ghosts and monsters would return to their original form. Sophia had no idea about the internet news, and this time around, her phone rang again. Upon fishing it out, she found that it was another friend request and opened it. The profile picture was a confident selfie as the person smiled widely and showed off his 2 canine teeth. His profile name was Big Connor, and the comment read, "It's me." At the provision store, Chris fawned on Jasper and smiled. Boss, she definitely won't accept a stranger's friend request. Wait and see, she'll definitely reject me too. As he said it, his phone vibrated. Both of them dipped their heads and saw WeChat's notification. Learning, one has accepted your friend request. Chris. Chapter 30. The place became quiet for a few seconds. Chris was all tense and felt a shudder down his spine. Swallowing hard, he dared not look at Jasper's sharp eyes and quickly put away the phone in his hand as he said seriously, "Boss, this is actually your phone." 5 seconds later, Jasper picked up his phone and said coldly, "Then what are you staring at my phone for?" Chris, looking at the new Lemon brand phone that he'd bought 2 days ago, he silently bade goodbye to it with tears and took a few steps back in silence. Seeing that he had left, Jasper began typing. Buzz. Sophia had just finished doing a physics question when her phone rang. She lifted her head to have a look and realized that it was a message sent by Canine Teeth. Big Connor, what are you doing? Sophia thought that this sentence was nonsense. As a student, what else could she be doing now? Canine Teeth seemed to be clever, but why did he ask such a stupid question? Thankfully, she still replied to him nicely. Learning. Attending classes. Big Connor. Then stop chatting with others, it'll affect your studies. In Sophia's mind, a question mark was slowly being drawn out. Who is others? Oh, she replied to him and continued to be engrossed in doing her questions. After finishing 2 periods, Sophia walked toward the classroom, but on the way, she saw everyone gesticulating at her. She had no idea why, and by the time she got back to class 1, she saw that the last row of the classroom was occupied by the flames. Several flames got together and shouted as they typed. Are you even allowed to talk about our Roaring Flame Society's leader? Young lad, I'll remember your ID. Our sister Sophia is simply formidable to have joined the Math Olympiad class. If you have the capability, then join it too. Old Potter is known for being impartial, why would he accept you? Sister Sophia is formidable. That's right, the Math Star competition is starting soon and we'll let you see Sister Sophia's prowess then. Just as they were discussing, Hannah saw Sophia and coughed. The flames immediately shut their mouths. Jackson leaned on the wall at the back and did not mind Hannah's cough. He was refuting those rumors in the forum, and although he was quiet in reality, he was aggressive when it came to quarreling. Roaring Flame Society has joined the fight. Everyone, let's leave. By the time the Math Star competition's results are out, the truth will be unveiled. Jackson replied personally, leave what? Let's fight. If you're a man, then be strong openly. I'm really scared to be targeted by the Roaring Flame Society. I won't even know how I'll die by then. Jackson, it's a pity that you aren't frying vegetables because you really know how to add oil and vinegar. After rebuking several people, he saw an anonymous comment. Sophia has just joined the school and is already part of the Roaring Flame Society. Doesn't everyone have any idea what kind of people are in that society? How can there be a curve wrecker among people of such quality? Looking at this sentence, Jackson froze. His hand stopped and he did not reply momentarily. This comment seemed to have resonated with others, and it collected more than 400 likes when there were only 1,000 people in all 3 levels. Someone commented below again. There was an incident of the class fund being stolen in experimental class 1 today. The person in the CCTV footage was clearly Hannah, and the money was also found under her desk, but eventually, it was said to be Lauren's fault. I saw Jackson going to the Teaching Affairs Department to look for the director, asking for Lauren's punishment. Speaking of punishment, the Roaring Flame Society did nothing short of dyeing their hair, being late, leaving school early, and bullying other students, but why aren't they being punished? Sorry for being direct, but the 3 words, Roaring Flame Society, sound silly and I feel pretty embarrassed for them. As for the theft incident, the truth can only be one of these 2. First, Hannah stole it and framed Lauren. Second, Lauren has been bullied too many times by Hannah and can no longer stand her. Therefore, she bought a wig and pretended to be Hannah to steal the money. I actually feel sorry for Lauren. Feel sorry for Lauren +1. Feel sorry for Lauren +10086. After a series of messages about feeling sorry, the topic shifted to Sophia again. A bunch of ignorant, incompetent, and worthless people. Without the Walker family's protection, what are they? Since Sophia is with them, her first place ranking must have been inflated. The Walker family might have given her the papers in advance. Jackson balled up his fists. Ever since he was young, he had been eccentric and was never bothered by others' opinions. No matter what he did, Elder Walker would always encourage him. He usually said, "Why learn that? The family has enough money for you to spend next time. We don't need to suffer through that hardship." Therefore, he had never thought that this attitude toward life was problematic. He only took a look at the forum because he heard that Sophia was getting bashed there. However, the Roaring Flame Society, which he set up in middle school and was proud of, was actually throwing mud at Sophia's name. This was the first time he felt ashamed. At this moment, a silhouette stood in front of him and asked hesitatingly, "What are you doing?" Jackson was shocked. Lifting his head, he saw the girl standing right in front of him, and her beautiful face was as exquisite as that of a doll. A girl like her naturally exuded radiance. But now, because of the Roaring Flame Society, she was stuck in a morass. Thinking of which, Jackson quickly locked his phone. He stood up straight and said guiltily, "Nothing much. Why is Little Flame so nervous?" Just as Sophia was feeling baffled, Hannah, also known as Little Talkative, gave free rein to her nature. She explained the whole situation and even narrated a few significant comments. "This is too much. They even said they'd laugh at the joke after the results of the Math Star are out. Little Sophia, you need to score better than Dylan and embarrass them." After she said that, the flames turned to look at her. Flame number 1 tried to sound her out and asked carefully, "Sister Sophia, how are your Math Olympiad classes going? Can you get an award?" They had never played with a curve wrecker in the past. People like Dylan and Tina would pretend not to see them if they bump into each other, as though speaking one line to them would make them turn into delinquents themselves. If Sophia could score well, their Roaring Flame Society would be able to walk with their heads held high. At the thought of it, he heard Sophia slowly saying, "Manageable." Everyone else. What does manageable mean? It means unmanageable. Flame number 1 was astonished, and moments later, he coughed. Actually, being able to participate is an honor itself. It doesn't matter if you get any rankings. Flame numbers 2, 3, and 4 seconded, right. Hannah also hurriedly comforted her. "Little Sophia, it doesn't matter if you don't do well. Don't feel pressured. The key thing is the process." Sophia. She did not explain further and picked up her bag to go home. Soon, it was the weekend, and the Math Star competition was about to begin.
Loved this episode? There's so much more to explore. Click the link in the description to catch all the episodes and never miss a moment. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe us.